Story 1.
My wife cheated and wanted an open marriage, but I chose revenge instead and left her without a word. As I sat pondering the recent events, I couldn't identify any specific signs indicating she was being unfaithful. No matter how hard I tried, the unease I felt stemmed from numerous small details accumulating rather than one glaring issue. There was definitely something going on, yet I couldn't grasp what it was. I was certain of some mischief, but lacked evidence. I was clueless about who, what, or where this was happening, to the point where I questioned my own sanity. Am I reading too much into this situation? Perhaps I'm exaggerating, conjuring various scenarios of her infidelity. But with whom? I couldn't say. Yet my gut churned with uncertainty. I sensed rather than knew that something was amiss. Perhaps this marked the onset of an affair, possibly a one-time occurrence. The more I dwelled on thoughts and fantasies, the more self-assured I felt. It seemed like I'd been in this space for weeks, but how long had it been before I even slightly sensed something was amiss? I took another sip of my JD. The clinking ice signaled the need for a refill. Catching the bartender's eye, he nodded and smoothly exchanged my glass for another double JD on the rocks. He offered a faint smile, seemingly understanding my inner turmoil. He had encountered that expression countless times. His gaze conveyed both support and empathy as he noticed the distress in my eyes. The sweet taste of JD warmed my mouth and throat with each sip. I resolved to calm myself, scanning the bar and observing a few other patrons. It was serene, the murmurs of conversation filling the air with incomprehensible words, amplifying my growing sense of discontent. There was no happiness here. The patrons' faces were devoid of emotion, blending into the crowd without distinction. Everyone seemed plain and unremarkable. The lone woman, appearing to be in her 40s and slightly overdressed for the time and place, perhaps appeared a bit desperate, was being treated to drinks by an older man who seemed hopeful and attentive towards her. He didn't need to try so hard, I figured. She already had his number. The other patrons appeared to be simply passing time, while the rain outside further dampened the mood. Soon, they would each run out of reasons to linger in the comfort of the bar and head home. I still haven't made up my mind about what I'm going to do. So, what's going on? I turned toward the voice. She gazed at me, her eyes peering deep into my soul. Though I thought I opened my mouth to respond, no words came out. She stood in the dimly lit bar, water dripping from her coat as she began to remove it. "What brings you here, Sammy? I was worried about you and had a hunch I'd find you here, so here I am." "Do you want to talk?" I looked at her, trying to regain some composure. "Are you concerned about me?" "Why? What's happening?" I scrutinized her, wondering if she had any hidden motives. Could I trust her? I took a sip of my JD and ordered her a drink, soda, which the bartender served with flair, smiling at the sight of Sammy. She caught his eye as he served her, flashing one of his charming smiles as his gaze lingered on her ample bosom, accentuated by her tight blouse. Sammy waited until the bartender walked away before addressing the situation. There was a mutual sense of uncertainty between us, along with an unspoken power struggle. I mentioned concerns about her recent behavior, indicating that she appeared burdened. I expressed a desire for her to share what was going on. When I looked into her brown eyes, I was reminded of how effortlessly she understood me, like an open book. This understanding between us was something I deeply valued. Despite occasional disagreements, we maintained a transparent and honest relationship. However, there were certain things we didn't explicitly discuss, yet we both understood them. She reassured me, saying she was fine and that our relationship was in a good place, alleviating my worries. I watched as she processed my words. It was clear she wasn't buying it. My heart sank, and I tried to shake off the feeling, but it lingered. Sammy took a deliberate sip from her glass, her gaze penetrating into mine once more. "Oh God, this is it," I thought. She set her glass down and interlocked her fingers, leaning slightly forward toward me. I tried to play it cool by asking what she knew and what I was supposedly hiding. She responded by suggesting we drop the act and be genuine with each other. This caught the attention of the bartender, who subtly turned his head to listen in. She then proposed we find a more private booth, as the current setting was too public. As we moved to a secluded booth, I could see disappointment on the bartender's face. Once seated across from each other, the tension was palpable as we prepared for our forthcoming conversation. I mentioned that I had competed in a tournament and asked for her opinion. She saw through my attempt at deception and reminded me that we had known each other for a long time. She urged me to confide in her, mentioning her familiarity with Sammy since she was 17. She noted that Sammy had always been around and had once had a crush on her when she dated Sammy's sister, CLA. CLA was 3 years older, and we began dating when we were both 20. Sammy and I always got along, much to the displeasure of her older sister. They were as different as night and day in many ways, but their personalities clashed often, evidenced by the numerous quarrels between the sisters over the years. 2 years later, CLA and I tied the knot and envisioned what I believed to be an ideal future. We both held respectable jobs and earned enough to lead a comfortable life. My sister-in-law, Sammy, had her share of fun in her late teens and early 20s, and now, at 25, was seeking something more mature. I felt like she had outgrown her wild phase and had become someone any man would be fortunate to know. Claire and I have been married for 5 years. Well, we'll reach 5 in a month when our anniversary arrives, that's if we make it that far, I thought. Sammy is a very attractive woman, and someone I considered a friend, as well as my sister-in-law. Tears welled in my eyes as I gazed at her, searching for words to express how I felt, but still, her words, "I know," resounded loud and clear in my mind. She reached across the table, her fingers caressing mine before squeezing them tightly, a gesture of support and more, as I felt my heart slowly shattering. "All right, Steve, if you won't tell me, then I'll say it. She's cheating on you. I'm pretty sure you know this." "Of course I know. What are you going to do about it now?" My eyes widened at those words, yet I still resisted understanding as I stubbornly tried to rationalize what I knew and what it meant. I didn't want to hear anything anymore. In my mind, if I didn't truly know, then it couldn't have happened, and thus it couldn't have hurt me. I wouldn't have to deal with it either. Sammy gazed at me, noticing the distant look in my eyes. Was it shock or denial? "Steve, I love you dearly, but for goodness sake, wake up." "I'm sure it's some kind of misunderstanding or something." I attempted to brush it off and deceive myself further. Suddenly, Sammy's eyes flashed with anger. She reached out and slapped me hard across the face. The bartender halted, wiping the glass he held. "Everything all right over there?" I raised my hand. "Yes, everything's fine here." I touched my cheek, feeling the heat from the slap, and certain Sammy's perfect handprint lingered there. "I'm sorry, Steve, but sometimes you drive me crazy. You know how much I care about you, and I can't bear to see you hurt like this, so be wise and courageous. This is happening and we need to address it." I swallowed, rubbing my cheek as the seriousness of my situation sank in, the pain from her slap jolting me to reality. "All right, I'll start. I'm sure you at least suspect something, but I'll continue anyway. A few weeks back, I was with her when her cell phone rang. She stepped out to answer it, which struck me as odd considering we're sisters. Darn it, what could she be hiding from me? I nodded, bracing myself for the worst. But as I sipped my JD, she continued. "I just found it peculiar, so when I had the chance, I checked her phone. She's so trusting, there wasn't even a lock code on it." The call was from a guy in her contacts who introduced himself as Robert. I had no clue about any Robert or Bob, but I decided to keep an eye out for any recurrence. "So, who's this guy, Robert or Bob?" I inquired, trying to recall any mention of this name. "I actually found out about him roughly a week later. He's someone she knew years ago, before she even started dating you. Anyway, it seems he reached out to her through some social network or chat site. Looks like they've been messaging each other for a while now, but I had no idea. All I sensed was that there were these little things happening that seemed to fly under the radar. Yeah, I get it. But it all seemed to fit into their interactions. Nothing overt, but it felt like everything was aligning for them. So, it's just two friends messaging each other, reminiscing about the old days or something? It seems that way. That's how it began anyhow. Are you implying something happened? Yes. And you're saying you didn't detect anything suspicious? Just that it felt like circumstances were working against us. Plus the glaring absence of opportunities for fun. Sammy regarded me with an incredulous expression, as if I were being foolish. What? I returned her gaze. Steve, I care about you deeply, but come on, snap out of it. Reality sank deeper into my foggy mind as her words grew increasingly real. Damn, I thought this was serious. Taking another sip, I mustered my courage. How far do you think it went, or do you know? Sammy met my gaze, her eyes gleamed, briefly averting before locking back onto mine. That fleeting glance told me everything I needed to know. When? How? Where? I queried hastily, my mind racing to catch up as anger began to simmer within me. The battle between reason, sensibility, and raw fury had commenced. I know she's seen him at least 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Initially, I wasn't certain, and it was only 2 days ago that I confirmed it had escalated. I was having lunch with a friend who works alongside CLA, and she accidentally let it slip. I didn't react then, and Claire hid it well, so I let it slide. Turns out she met him twice for lunch and at least once for dinner last week. Does this align with what you observed? I studied her, absorbing her revelations. There have been a couple of instances recently where I phoned her office to arrange a lunch meeting, but she wasn't there. Or she had just left. Was that when she met him? Then last week she attended a seminar that she insisted on going to. It was announced last minute and scheduled for after work. That evening she returned home late, past midnight, reminiscing about the event. She mentioned it had dragged on, and her team went for a drink at the hotel bar before leaving. I also recall there was no closeness that night, and she took a shower before bed. My thoughts raced, my mind swirled in confusion as I absorbed these painful truths, each one intensifying the agony and twisting the knife lodged firmly in my heart. To hell with all this, I suddenly spat. Sammy glanced at me, her eyes now reflecting concern. Steve, what's your plan? Don't do anything reckless. You don't want to end up in legal trouble because of her. Meeting her gaze, I sensed she had detected the shift in me. My face felt like stone, my heart a solid block of granite. My body braced for what lay ahead, and she could see it. To hell with all this. I refuse to tolerate this under any circumstances. It ends now. She'll pay. He'll pay too. Rage bubbled within me, my muscles tightened, fists clenched. I'd never been one for violence. Sure, I'd had my fair share of confrontations in my younger days, but I never sought out trouble. Sometimes you simply must confront the truth, which is precisely what I intended to do. It had been a while, but it needed addressing, and fast. Steve, whatever you're thinking, take a moment. Consider your options. Don't act hastily without a plan. Otherwise, things will spiral out of control. You need to strategize and prepare, otherwise, you'll only end up getting hurt, she cautioned. Her words tempered my rage, penetrating the rational part of my brain and making sense. Strangely enough, it helped me to regain some composure, realizing that my suspicions were indeed valid. At least I wasn't losing my mind. Is she there right now? I glanced at Sammy, noticing tears welling up in her eyes as a solitary tear traced down her delicate face. Yes, she's with him at this moment. That's why I sought you out, she revealed. Rage surged within me, prompting me to pound my fist on the table. Heads turned in the bar, drawing attention. I signaled to the bartender, who responded with a knowing half-smile. How did he know? Do you have any idea where exactly? I inquired, hopeful for some clarity. No clue, but tomorrow I'll meet with my friend again to gather more information. I know he's married with kids, but I'm unsure of his exact whereabouts. I'll do my best to find out. It might help, she responded. I reached for her hand, gripping it tightly, and wiped a tear from her cheek. Thanks, Sammy. I know this is tough for you, but I truly appreciate it. What's your plan? She regarded me with concern. I can't act impulsively. Not yet anyway, but I'll put an end to it. When I do, it'll be final, with no regrets. They'll both face consequences. For now, I'll safeguard what's mine and gather evidence for my next move. Sammy eyed me anxiously as I finished my JD. Catching the bartender's eye, he poured us another round. As he approached, I sensed Sammy wanting to speak. I motioned to wait until the drinks arrived, then handed the bartender a bill. Keep the change, I said, dismissing him. How long before you confront her? I pondered. I need time to strategize. Tomorrow, I'll make some calls and secure my assets. She won't get a cent from me if I have my way. It'll be tough for you to be around her, won't it? Yes, I realize that, but in a way, it's been that way for weeks now. If she hasn't noticed a change yet, she won't notice anything different. Sammy downed her drink in one gulp and rose abruptly. I have to go, Steve. Can we chat again tomorrow? I'll gather all the info I can. She donned her coat, and I stood, assisting her, sensing her proximity. Darn, she resembled her sister so much. Tears welled in her eyes as I kissed her cheek. Head home. I'll manage. I'll ring you up tomorrow. With a smile, she turned away, and I watched her depart into the dark, damp evening. Taking a deep breath, I settled back into my seat, pondering my next move. One thing was clear: they would face consequences. Swift, ruthless, and unforgiving. Memories faded after that. Somehow I awoke in my own bed, mouth dry as a desert. My head still spun as I lifted myself from the bed. Rolling over, I noticed I was alone, with Kelly nowhere in sight. My senses gradually returned as I heard a noise downstairs. I swung my legs off the bed and attempted to rise. Oh my God, what did I do to myself last night? I pondered, staggering to the bathroom. I began to shake off the effects of my JD haze. Descending the stairs, pain enveloped me, and my joints protested, everything throbbed. Peering into the kitchen, I spotted her. Hello, my love. What happened to you last night? Do you want to hear about it? I cursed inwardly. Just had a drink with an old friend, got carried away, that's all. I seated myself, poured some orange juice, downed it, and poured another. Really? Who was it? Someone I know? My mind raced. No, I don't think so. It was Bob. Haven't seen him in ages. He was in town on business. Bob? A flicker of recognition crossed her face when she turned around. Yeah, probably. I mentioned him once. We were in college together, played football. He still asked about you. Claire seemed puzzled. Sorry, don't recall any Bob, but as long as you had fun, right? Seize the moment. She took a seat across from me. Recalling my conversation with Sammy, I looked her in the eye. So honey, what did you do last night? Anything interesting? When did you get back? She met my gaze, lying effortlessly. Oh, nothing much. Finished work, grabbed a bite and drinks, home by 9:30. Started to worry about you, but remembered your late meeting. I knew she hadn't returned home by then because I was still there at 10 p.m. That's when I reached my limit and headed to the bar. Second strike. I've got some things to take care of this morning, so I'll shower and hit the road. I might be late tonight, so don't wait up. Bob mentioned he'd be in touch. We've got catching up to do. If he stays a few days, you'll have to invite him over. It's nice reconnecting with old friends. I'll make sure to do that. You must have some fond memories of him. She gazed at me with a blank expression, trying to conceal any reaction, but there was something there. I could sense it. Maybe it'll come back to me later, love. Now, hurry or you'll be late. Want me to drive? You had a bit too much to drink last night. No, I'm fine. I'll grab a taxi to pick up my car, thanks. Though. After downing more orange juice and a couple of painkillers, I got dressed and left the house 30 minutes later, while CLA was still getting ready. I had a hectic day ahead. One thing was certain, this wouldn't drag on. I gritted my teeth at the thought of CLA with Bob. My fists clenched. He'd pay, and I'd crush him. Work was chaos. Call after call to resolve line issues. My secretary handled some, but I had to attend meetings. By mid-morning, the rush eased, and I had a bit of downtime to address personal matters. Closing my office door, I delved into my finances. Within 15 minutes, I had cinched up my wallet strings and relocated some cash out of easy reach. Additionally, I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer to explore the option of divorce. With a few days still ahead, I figured it would afford me time to gather further intel. While it might not carry substantial weight, it could provide some leverage. Claire maintained her own bank account and credit card, so no action was necessary there. The issue lay in accessing our joint account, yet I swiftly closed that avenue, ensuring she couldn't access more than what remained. My personal account was safeguarded, with only a nominal balance, the rest securely withdrawn. Given our childless status, any split would likely be straightforward. I privately resolved that reconciliation rested solely on Claire's confession and plea for forgiveness. Any reluctance would spell the end for us. This realization weighed heavily on me as I sat pensively at my desk, reflecting on the day's events and decisions. Did I require further insight into Bob's character and additional evidence, or was my knowledge alone sufficient to confront them both? Interrupting my contemplation, the phone rang. Hello, it's me, Sammy. How are you, Steve? Oh, caught up with things. Thoughts, plans, sorting through it all. Interestingly, I've made some headway. Got more intel on this guy from a friend. His name's Bob Stones, and he's married. I've also got his address and workplace. I obtained this information discreetly. A friend who knows CLA recently spotted her with him. According to her, they're getting quite cozy. She insists that despite their efforts to conceal it, the signs are evident. Has she witnessed them together? I inquired. Yes, they were at the Rada the other evening after the seminar. They lingered after everyone else had left. Well, it's a starting point. I'm certain there are CCTV cameras there if necessary. Anyway, please provide me with his details. I need to unravel this. It's gnawing at me inside, and I'm not sure how much longer I can keep it bottled up. Sammy provided her details, and in minutes, I located his social media page and obtained his photo. That's when I felt like I recognized his face. It seemed familiar, but where and when had I encountered this face before? Glancing at my watch, nearly lunchtime, I contemplated. Calling Claire, perhaps to arrange a meeting or simply to stir things up. My heart sank as I dialed her number, the knot in my stomach tightening as I heard her answer. Hi, darling, she greeted, recognizing my number. Hey, sweetheart, what's your lunch plan? Any chance we can meet up? Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I have an appointment in 30 minutes that will take up the whole day. I was just going to grab something quick at the grocery store nearby. Everything okay? What's up with the meeting? Anything interesting? Just the usual routine with a new client? It's Mr. Stones, I think. Her words cut through me sharply as if she was deliberately taunting me with his name. I held my breath for a moment, trying to keep my composure. Nice, are you around? Her voice came through the earpiece. Yes, I'm here, you damned cow. That's strike 3. Both you and Mr. Damn Stones will face consequences soon. No reprieve, no mercy. It's going to be a complete scorched earth. Yes, honey, I'm here. Sorry, I got a little lost in thought for a moment there. Anyway, I have to run, and I know you have to get ready for your meeting too. Have a good time, and I'll catch up with you later, okay? Bye, love you. Bye, love you. I ended the call, seething with rage, and sat there gritting my teeth. When my secretary popped her head in through the door, "Steve, I'm heading to the grocery store nearby. Want me to grab you anything?" I pondered for a moment. "Yeah, surprise me. Just make sure it's substantial, hearty, with plenty of red meat. I'm craving something to really sink my teeth into." She gave me an odd look, then nodded before closing the door. She couldn't shake the feeling that her boss was acting strangely. He'd been holed up in his office all morning, business as usual, but there was an undercurrent. Something was brewing. She just knew it. Sammy dialed her sister's office and stepped into the lobby to find her sister exiting the elevator alongside a tall, dark-haired man. He looked to be around 30, a few years older perhaps. She recognized him from his photo on the internet. Bob Stones, standing before her sister, who seemed taken aback. "Sammy, what are you doing here?" Her sister's discomfort was palpable, her plans clearly disrupted. "I just thought I'd swing by to see you and maybe grab lunch," Sammy said with an innocent smile. "Well, Mr. Stones and I have a business lunch planned, so maybe another time," her sister interjected, extending her hand to him. "Bob Stones, pleasure to meet you." "Sammy," she replied, "how long have you known TLA?" Bob seemed momentarily puzzled by her question. TLA began to pull Sammy away. "Listen, Sammy, we really have to go. We have a meeting. Catch up with you later." Sammy grinned as she observed the couple exiting the premises and stepping into a waiting taxi. She caught her sister's glance as the vehicle drove off. I sat in my office, indulging in a hefty slice of pie laden with red meat, relishing each bite as I contemplated my next moves. With confirmation from Sammy that Claire had left her office, I phoned her secretary to learn she'd be out all day. Well, isn't this just peachy? Financial matters sorted, locksmith ready, lawyer primed. Tonight was meant to be the first step. I planned to toy with this couple before making a move. My old man's advice echoed in my mind. Keep it simple, be direct, obliterate them. Few words, but potent. Maybe something I'd forgotten, but it was coming back. It was imminent. That evening, I was at home when Claire walked in. She looked her usual beautiful self, nothing out of the ordinary. She smelled normal too, until I went in to kiss her. The unmistakable scent of men's cologne lingered faintly. She noticed my gaze. I didn't say anything, kissed her lightly on the cheek and headed for the door. "Where are you headed? Everything all right?" "I'm all right, just got a problem to sort out. Heading over to Jerry's. He asked me to join a poker game with some work buddies. Figured it might help clear my head. Won't be out too late." With that, I shut the door, gritted my teeth, and hopped into my car. Easing down the driveway, I drove to Jerry's, parked in front of his house, and he guided me into his garage. Jerry and I go way back. He's always been a bit of a rebel and had run-ins with the law in the past, but with his combat skills, he's just the ally I need for this. You don't mess with a cage fighter. Jerry's a big guy, just over 6 feet tall and weighing about 198 lb, all muscle. Trust me, you don't want to cross him. With a personality to match his size, he's a force to be reckoned with. But we've been close pals since school. I gave Jerry a call earlier, and he offered to assist in any way, no questions asked. Exactly the support I need. We quickly slipped into the garage, and I changed into dark overalls and a matching ski mask. We stood there like two silent performers, not uttering a word as we climbed into the inconspicuous used car he'd arranged. There was nothing remarkable about it. As we strolled slowly across town to the address Sammy provided, we remained silent. We planned it all out in advance, so there was no need for conversation. Jerry parked the car near Bob Stones' house. There was no activity visible, except for a single light on. We waited quietly. When the front door opened, we observed him exiting, getting into his car and driving off. Jerry trailed him at a safe distance, and since we knew his destination, there was no need to rush or feel anxious. Parking at the training field was hassle-free. We remained in the car while Bob Stones retrieved his customary 50-ball bucket, a routine he apparently followed weekly. It's remarkable what you can learn online with the right search. We settled in, the radio softly playing Kenny Rogers in the background. Jerry glanced at me as the lyrics filled the air, then reached over and muted it. We sat, watching and waiting. The tension inside me was nearly unbearable. It took immense effort to remain composed and resist the urge to confront him directly, but such a move would be risky. As the parking lot gradually emptied, leaving only a couple of other cars, we both tensed when we saw him approaching his vehicle. Jerry stealthily exited the car and approached our target. Bob Stones was still recovering from his last golf swing practice. As he opened the trunk to stow his clubs, Jerry swiftly seized him and shoved him into the trunk alongside his equipment. A precise punch to the jaw rendered him silent. With Jerry's background in cage fighting, he swiftly gained the upper hand, subjecting Bob Stones to intense pain for the next 30 seconds. Satisfied with the punishment, Jerry shifted his focus to Stones's groin, delivering several blows until he cried out and lost consciousness. Jerry shut the trunk and swiftly returned to the car, where I calmly drove us out of the parking lot without attracting attention. Everything went smoothly, Jerry remarked, removing his gloves and mask. Thanks, Jerry, I owe you big time, I acknowledged gratefully. No worries, buddy. Anytime. I'll always have your back, and there's no way to repay what you've done for me, Jerry replied. That's what friends are for. At least your hands are intact, and there were no security cameras in the parking lot, so all in all, a job well done. Let's head back and kick off this card game. The others should already be there. We returned and indulged in a friendly game of poker for the next 4 hours, just for amusement with no high stakes involved. Being friends, we understood the unspoken rule: friends don't take advantage of each other. The atmosphere was pleasant. Everyone was aware of the situation and offered their support throughout, which bolstered my confidence about what I knew I would soon have to confront Claire about. But before that, I planned to toy with her. I stumbled through the door a little past 1 a.m., exaggerating how much I had drunk. Jerry arranged for one of the guys to drive my car back. CLA was awake and waiting. It was time for a performance worthy of an Oscar. Darling, why are you still up? I mentioned I might be late. Are you all right? She scrutinized me closely. Jerry and the guys just dropped me off in my car, concerned that I might have overindulged in JD again. I flung my jacket toward the coat rack and missed by a mile. Collapsing onto the sofa, I gazed at her. Claire sat with her arms folded, wearing a disgusted expression. I met her gaze with wide eyes and a blank expression. What? She snorted, clearly itching to say something. Go ahead, spill it. What's wrong? Steve, is there someone else or something else? You've been acting strangely lately. I chuckled, suppressing the rising anger. All in good time, Claire. Take a chill pill. I'm fine, my dear. It's just been a rough patch lately. It'll all be over soon. CLA studied me, my words echoing in her mind. She seemed uncertain, but there was definitely something brewing. We retired to bed. I pretended to drift off, apparently falling asleep almost instantly. This irritated her, fueling her readiness to confront me, but I remained passive. The following morning, CLA rose early to prepare coffee while I stumbled down the stairs, feigning a hangover. I stumbled into the kitchen. Good morning, darling, how are you? Thank goodness, I'm feeling better now. Do you have anything for this headache? She tossed some pain relievers my way as I sipped my coffee. She appeared composed. I noticed her phone on the kitchen table and wondered if someone had called her. Claire caught my gaze on her phone and I sensed her urge to grab it, but doing so would have seemed odd. Pouring myself more orange juice, I casually picked up the phone and saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. Needs charging, sweetheart. Wouldn't want to miss any messages due to a dead battery. I exited the kitchen to get dressed. Clay watched me, sensing that something was amiss, and Bob hadn't texted her this morning as he had been doing for the past few weeks. But he couldn't know, could he? She dismissed the thought. She hadn't been that careless, and it had only been a brief fling. There were a few lunches, dinners, a couple of outings, and of course, 3 hotel stays, not that she was counting. It was just safe fun, she rationalized, and Steve would never find out, would he? This thought made her pause. When was the last time she and her husband had been carnal? She couldn't recall. Perhaps that's just how it was. She needed to address it promptly. She had become so consumed by Bob that she overlooked what was right in front of her, the one thing that could raise Steve's suspicions. I hurried down the stairs and dashed out the door, evading Keelay's attempt at a deeper kiss. Waving and smiling, I drove off. Around 11 a.m. for work, feeling playful, I decided to text Claire. Apologies for today, my dear. I've got a lot on my mind, but it'll sort out soon. Love you. 10th. I reclined in my chair, waiting for a reaction. Shortly after lunch, Sammy rang me up. Steve, what's the deal? What's up? Sammy, Bob Stones was discovered smacked in his car trunk by a golf club worker today. Claire mentioned it. She's pretty shaken. I reassured her these things happen sometimes nowadays, especially when it's someone we know, but we shouldn't dwell on it too much. You weren't involved, were you? Wow, was he seriously injured? I can't say it's a loss, but no, I had no part in it. He's just a bit roughed up. Heard he has some cuts and bruises, but nothing serious. Did you find out how she found out? Yeah, she had a meeting scheduled with him today, and his company called too. Say he was in the hospital. His wife made the call. Seems sweet, believable, but convenient. Maybe they won't have it so easy next time. What do you mean, Steve? Accidents happen in strange places. That night, Claire wasn't home. Her car was gone and there was no note. I dialed her phone. Where are you, honey? I asked cheerily. Oh, I'm at the hospital visiting a friend. I'll be home soon. I'm on my way. All right. Hope your friend improves. Anyway, see you soon. Love. Love you, bye. I hung up before she could reply. 30 minutes later, she returned, looking worn out. How's your friend? Hope it's nothing serious and she gets discharged soon. Claire seemed about to speak, then changed her mind. Oh yeah, it's not too serious. She just took a fall and got some nasty bruises. We'll be back home in a few days. This coffee is good. Yes, thank you, Sla replied, taking a sip. The other night, one of my company's representatives was attacked, she mentioned, leaving the statement hanging for a reaction. Oh God, really? What happened? Was he smacked and left in his car overnight? Yes, unfortunately. Bob wasn't severely injured. It seems like they just wanted to thrash him up for no reason. Nothing was stolen. Strike 4. This is the same Bob you claim not to know, cow, I muttered to myself. Clay noticed my gaze and realized her mistake. She quickly tried to cover it up, but it was too late now. She knew I knew. Hurriedly, she made her way to the exit to change clothes. I suspected she might receive a phone call any second, but from whom? I realized I needed to reassess my plan as things were progressing rapidly. Calling out to CLA as she ascended the stairs, I informed her that I needed to step out for a while to handle something, assuring her not to worry and that I wouldn't be gone long. I drove to Bob Stone's home address and knocked on the door. It opened to reveal a petite, dark-haired woman standing before me. Mrs. Stones, you don't know me, but I need to discuss something delicate with you. Can I step inside for a moment? She regarded me with a mix of nerves, curiosity, and caution. I'm Steve Ryland. My wife, CLA Ryland, is having an affair with your husband. I paused as a blend of realization and horror flickered across her face. Stepping back, she motioned for me to enter, leading me to the living room. I assume this concerns both of them, she said, pain evident in her eyes. Yes, unfortunately, they've been having an affair and I only discovered it a few days ago. I'm sorry to have to bring this to your attention. I also know that he's currently in the hospital. Her demeanor seemed to collapse inward, tears streaming down her face for several moments. I suspected as much. I knew he was at it again, she spat. I'm filing for divorce from Claire. She's had ample chances to come clean and I can't tolerate her deceit any longer. I'm not certain how long this has been going on, but the fact that she betrayed me is enough. I can't forgive or forget. Does this relate to the thrashing he endured last night? I met her imploring gaze and swiftly made my decision. I can't say I had no hand in it whatsoever. The whole thing caught me off guard, leaving me just as stunned. Whoever did it, I can't say I'm upset about it. Sorry, but that's how I feel. Could he also be involved with someone else's wife? Nothing would surprise me. Well, he can stay far away from my doorstep. I've had my fill of this. That's why we're back here, because he cheated. I left her, still seething, after providing her with the contact information for my locksmith and lawyer. Dear, oh my God, what a mess. I hopped into my car and made my way to the hospital, which was just 10 minutes away. I arrived even quicker. Passing through the lobby, I felt a lifting from my shoulders, almost allowing a smile to break through. Squeezing into the elevator, I ascended to the 4th floor, where a certain Mr. Bob Stones resided. Consulting the patient directory, I located his room in a side wing. Slipping past the nurse's station without notice, I entered his room and quietly closed the door behind me. Upon entering, he gave me a puzzled look. Approaching his bed, I examined his bandaged face. One eye was shut, the other bloodshot. He strained to focus. Jerry did a commendable job, I mused, scrutinizing him. You seem to be having trouble recognizing me, Bob. Take a moment to think. I'll wait, I said, grinning as he cast me a bewildered glance. I settled on the edge of his bed, peering through his facial bandages. I noticed a severely bruised eye and suspected issues with his jaw. It's inconsequential. Surveying the elevated bedding supporting his lower body, I winced. This looks awful. You must be in pain, right? Swiftly snatching the emergency button from him and tossing it beneath the bed, I playfully jabbed his ribs, prompting a squeal. Still pondering my identity, Bob needed a hint. His face retained its mix of confusion and curiosity. Let's see. Reflect on the married women you've been involved with and the marriages you've disrupted. Does that jog your memory? His eyes met mine, revealing a mind working overtime to piece things together. Another moment elapsed as I savored his evident distress and uncertainty. Need a nudge, Bob? Think about it. I'm tied to a woman named Claire. Does that jog your memory? Recognition sparked in his eyes. Got it now? I grinned, fierce as a pre-dinner tiger. He nodded in understanding. Great. Glad we've cleared that up. So, wondering about my presence here? Let me get to it. I'm here bearing a message from your wife. Pausing for comprehension, I mimicked the throat clearing, noting his impaired speech. She wants you to hear this. Here's the gist. Stay away. Don't show up. Divorce. Papers are coming your way. And just so you know, truly contemptible. A tear welled in his visible eye. Chuckling, I observed his restricted movement and leaned in to meet his gaze. I'm ending my marriage because my wife found pleasure with someone like you. This is just your starting point. We'll encounter each other again, guaranteed. I'll disrupt your life as you've disrupted mine. I won't relent, so be prepared to run. By the way, I'm not responsible for this, just a heads up. I wanted to keep him guessing. Raising my fist, I struck his exposed eye. I heard a crunch, not a big deal, then a sudden hit to my groin. He yelled and then blacked out. I stood up and exited the room. Was I content? Far from it, but it was a beginning. He'd lie there, realizing his error, unable to act. My departure was unnoticed. Had anyone seen, they'd have noticed my wide smile. I drove home cautiously, gearing up to address my other issue. My anger was contained. Once retaliation started, it was a path I'd eagerly pursue. While the end of my marriage deeply saddened me, her betrayal left no chance of reconciliation. My only solace, those who wronged me would soon experience even greater pain. I don't easily forgive. Bob Stones's card hinted at a future encounter. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed Claire's car exactly where she'd parked it just 2 hours prior. Absent-mindedly, I tapped its hood as I headed to my front door, contemplating this might be my final entry as a married man. A leaden feeling consumed my heart. Upon entering, the accumulated anxieties of recent days felt tangible, pressing down as I made my way to the living room. Approaching the door, I caught the faint sound of the TV. I paused, fixing my gaze on her. Claire was seated on the sofa, exuding palpable fear and apprehension, as though expecting imminent repercussions. She seemed to sense the culmination of our charade, though no words had been spoken. Her hands quivered as she tried to maintain composure while I stood observing. Lifting her eyes, fear was unmistakably present. Her lips moved, attempting to speak, but no words emerged. I entered, passed by her to pour myself a JD over ice, and set the glass on the table between us before sitting. Meeting her gaze, I detected her fear, coupled with a hint of defiance. Silently, I reached for my drink and savored a slow sip, feeling its warmth as it went down. My eyes locked onto hers without wavering. She waited. Let her wait, I mused, taking another deliberate sip. Maintaining my silence, my face remained impassive as I observed the woman I once deeply loved, staring back at me. Though my heart still harbored strong emotions for her, they were now tempered by the pain she'd inflicted without cause. It was time for her to understand my anguish. While I gazed at her, she found no hint of optimism in my expression. We had said so much already, wordlessly. Claire seemed to gather herself, standing taller as if choosing bravery, unaware of my knowledge and unable to bear the weight of my silent accusation. She broke the silence. Where did you go? Her eyes revealed her anxiety while I remained motionless and quiet. Speak to me, she pleaded. I leisurely took another sip of my JD. Nothing like JD after a hectic day, I mused, noting her growing distress. What's bothering you, Steve? She snapped, frustrated by my silent response. Fine, Claire. I'll share my whereabouts if you disclose yours. Deal? Her eyes met mine, cautious and wary, each of us sizing the other up like wary boxers, uncertain of who'd strike first and wary of the counterpunch. I mentioned being at the hospital visiting a friend. What's your point? She reclined in her chair, arms folded, satisfied with her initial response. I leisurely took another sip of my JD. Darling, I anticipated that response. Care to reconsider? Her composed facade wavered, fear evident in her eyes. She was becoming anxious. I had indeed been with my friend, just as I'd stated. Claire, what's causing the confusion? I'll clarify. I was visiting a friend, I began. Though our relationship is recent, we're growing closer. I scrutinized her reaction closely. Despite her efforts to remain poised, the defiant tilt of her chin betrayed her. Did I discuss her husband, Bob Stones? Does that name ring a bell? I hinted. A change in her demeanor was clear. It seemed her husband had an accident and was hospitalized. Though not severe, he had suffered significant bruises. He's recovering well, which is a relief, isn't it? I teased, watching Claire's face redden, sensing her apprehension. So, what was your conversation with Mrs. Stones about? She inquired, both eager and fearful to know. From what I gathered, her husband appears to be a consistent womanizer or cheater. Upon discovering his infidelity, I believe she deserved to be informed. "Oh my God," she exclaimed, feeling a constriction in her throat akin to a noose tightening. "Are you all right? Can I get you a drink? Do you know about Bob Stone's indiscretions?" I took a sip of my drink as she struggled to respond, her words failing her. "Let me assist you," I said, looking deeply into her eyes, hoping she'd sense my sincerity. "I'm aware." Now, her eyes widened, and she covered her mouth in shock. Observing her face, I saw a mix of disbelief and surprise. Despite seeking some support, my expression remained impassive. "I'm aware of your involvement with Bobby, darling. I've known for some time, not an eternity, but enough. So, if you have something to confess, now's the time." Before leaving my drink, I rose to refill it. "You sure you don't want one?" I asked, maintaining composure under the circumstances. She nodded, and I poured us both generous drinks, returning to sit across from her. Claire took a long sip before speaking. It was meaningless, just physical. It meant nothing, really. It meant absolutely nothing. Remember our vows? Her mention of the common "it was just love-making" excuse ignited anger within me. "It was a fleeting moment, Steve. It just happened." Seriously? Just happened? Such things don't just occur spontaneously. It requires two consenting adults, planning and agreement. Don't belittle me. You and Bobby have been deceiving me for weeks, maybe even months. But it ends now. Both of you can go to hell. It only happened twice, and honestly, it wasn't that enjoyable. The idea was enticing, but the act itself was overshadowed by my constant fear of you discovering it. Well, I've finally uncovered your deceit. I hope jeopardizing our marriage was worth it. Steve, I am genuinely sorry. It was meaningless, and we can work through this. I'll make things right and follow whatever you decide. A sudden, almost manic laugh escaped my lips, causing her to look at me with a realization that this situation was grave. It was an error, but we can mend it. I regret it deeply. Sure, you regret being caught. Would you have stopped if you hadn't been discovered? I doubt it. All the usual excuses pour out so effortlessly from someone unfaithful. Your lies ever since this began are just as fluent. You may believe them, but I certainly won't. Honestly, the woman I once loved and married seems lost. I don't even recognize you anymore. My words seemed to cut through her pretense, and she realized the gravity of our situation. What should I do, Steve? I'll do anything. Is it over between us? While I was away, I reached out to Sammy. She's aware of everything too. She'll be here shortly to pick you up. But where will I go? Are you throwing me out? Her shock became evident as she processed the situation. You're free to go wherever you want, deceitful person. Maybe back to the hospital to see your other man. I don't give a damn. What matters is that you leave. We're finished. I took the last sip of my drink and set the glass down with a firm thud, signaling the conversation's end. Claire stared at me, shocked, when a knock interrupted us. Rising, I greeted Sammy at the door. "How did everything go?" she asked as we returned to the living room, observing her sister, who was now crying uncontrollably, her shoulders heaving. "Just get her out of here, Sammy. I hate to be so direct, but if she stays, I'm concerned about what I might do. Despite her betrayal, I still have feelings for her. Please make it quick." "Thanks for handling this, Sammy, and I'll touch base soon." I poured myself another drink as Sammy efficiently packed Claire's belongings. Over the next few days, I heard my wife's cries while watching her sister pack and stuff her things into a few suitcases. Removing her from my home took less than 10 minutes. The true challenge lay ahead, removing her from my life entirely and healing. Retribution would aid in this journey. That's what I awaited now, along with another stiff drink. I gazed at the flames of the bonfire I'd lit in the backyard, consuming all of Claire's belongings. She had no place in my home anymore. "Damn you," I muttered, finishing the bottle and tossing it into the fire.
Story 2.
My wife cheated while I was recovering from an accident, showed no remorse, so I made her regret it. Hey guys, I 40 male have been married to Christine 39 female for about 10 years now, and we have one child, my lovely daughter who's 9 years old. Like any marriage, we've had our ups and downs, a lot of downs to be honest, but we come through everything fine. There's been no infidelity, but there have been trust issues on both our parts. I will admit, however, that in the last 2 years or so, I've done my best as a husband, and I think I've maintained a good record. My wife and I have a good life in the bedroom. We're getting older, but things haven't dropped off too significantly from back when we met. I've always been very thankful for that because I've been involved with women who might as well have been celibate, and it was frustrating to say the least. No amount of communication fixed anything, so a woman who actually wants to roll around in bed is a blessing to me. I owned a business before I met my wife, and when we got married, she eventually joined me at the helm to run things. About 2 weeks ago, I got into an accident on my way to work. I got T-boned at a red light and woke up in the hospital with a broken femur and humerus. Yeah, needless to say, that wasn't fun. Once it was certain there wasn't any internal damage, I was sent home in 2 days with a cast on my arm and leg. Obviously, my movement was impaired quite a lot, but I was able to find my way around the house with a lot of stumbling and leaning on things. Of course, there were certain things I was unable to do, and Christine had to help me with them for about the first week. She seemed fine with it, and every time I asked her if it wasn't too much of a burden, she'd say no with a big smile. However, once I crossed over into the second week, I started to notice a change in her attitude. To be honest, when I said our life in the bedroom is good, it's really good, and we usually don't go a full week without anything happening, my first assumption was that it might have been because of that. Especially since I was starting to feel my body craving it too. Again, when I asked her if I was being a burden, she said no, but this time she seemed more short with me. I asked her straight up whether it was because of the lack of action between us, but she said it wasn't, and left the room promptly after that. In that moment, I really felt like it was. But I also felt that being married as long as we have, she'd be able to answer me truthfully with a question like that. My mouth and one of my hands still worked, so I felt like we'd be able to work things out. Now, here's the thing. Yesterday, she came back home after managing the business on my behalf, and she was very clearly in a much better mood than she had been all the other days. Like, I could describe her mood as bubbly. I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but since I feel like her mood before was because we couldn't be intimate, I'm suddenly overthinking whether she was able to get somebody else to take care of that side of things for her. I mean, she's never cheated on me. Does anyone ever know for sure? And apart from that sudden change in her mood, I wouldn't have anything else to use to suspect her. But, talking to her, there didn't seem to be any obvious reason for her sudden happiness. So, before I do anything rash, not like I can, with the way I am right now, I want to hear all of your opinions. Should I try and do some digging? Or should I just assume that she was just happy for some other reason? I mean, I feel like I might be jumping to conclusions after such a long time of knowing each other, but let me know what you all think. Update. Hey everyone, it's been about 3 weeks since my last post, but I'm back with an update. A lot of you said I should go ahead and check her phone. Partners should be allowed to check each other's phones if they have nothing to hide. I know she can check mine as much as she wants because I've never had anything to hide. Well, I eventually did check, and boy did I find things. Anyway, I wasn't about to ask her to hand it over, because that would give her the chance to delete any evidence. I had to gain access to it at a time when I would have enough time to search through everything and potentially save any proof I found. Just so you know, after that day when she was all happy, she slowly went back into her mood, and then another day, she was all bubbly again. It was the third time that she came back all happy that I got my chance. She was chewing gum, but I was sure I could smell a slight scent of booze following her. She also didn't kiss me when she got back home, but she was happy. I think it might have been whatever she drank, but it didn't take long for her to fall asleep, and she left her phone right beside her in bed. I had never checked Christine's phone before, but I was very anxious as I did it because I was scared she could wake up at any moment, and I'd have to start trying to explain myself. But the anxiety from not knowing whether she was cheating on me was honestly a lot worse, so I pushed through. There were no photos or videos of her with anyone unusual, but it was when I went to her messaging app that I saw an unread message from an Alex. Squinting at the profile picture, I saw it was the same Alex I knew that worked for me. Things were very formal until about a day before my wife came home all bubbly for the first time. Alex had started flirting with her heavily, and she returned the energy. He must have gotten some kind of green light at work that day to come on strong. And it just made it clear how little I knew while I was at home recovering. I noticed that on the 3 occasions when my wife came back in a brighter mood, Alex always asked her if she had gotten home. But he never did that on other days. Between those days there was some flirting here and there, but nothing extreme, though it might as well have been. I took several pictures with my phone and put hers back. This was about 2 days ago, and I really don't know what to do. She didn't seem any different the next day, so I don't think she suspected I touched her phone, probably because she was tipsy. But I really don't know what to do. I have all the evidence I need to come to a very solid conclusion that my wife has cheated on me with my employee at least 3 times. But how do I proceed from here in a way that actually makes sense? Do I just say divorce and figure everything out from here? The thing is, I feel so hurt. We haven't had a super rosy marriage, but for the most part, it has been good. Cheating never seemed to be a fear of mine, but after I had an accident, that's when she decided to cheat on me. I've struggled to act normal around her, but I really don't know if I can take it any longer. I need this to end, but I can't let it just end with a divorce. I need more than that. I need to feel satisfied. Please, I've been trying to think of things I can do, but my mind is failing to put two thoughts together. I'll be waiting to hear what advice you all may have for me. Who needs crutches when you've got a keen eye for uncovering infidelity? Alright, now let's talk about your wife's little rendezvous with Mr. Employee of the Month, Alex. Looks like he's been taking more than just coffee breaks with her, huh? As for your dear wife, well, she's got some explaining to do, doesn't she? Cheating on you while you're laid up with broken bones? Talk about adding insult to injury. Now, on to the fun part, revenge. Sure, you could go the traditional route with a messy divorce, but where's the fun in that? Why not get a little creative with your payback? So, get plotting, get even, and most importantly, get back to living your best life without a cheating spouse dragging you down. After all, there's a whole world out there just waiting for you to conquer it, broken bones and all. Update, wow, time flies. It's been a long time since my last update, but after posting it, I think I must have read through every single comment there. Thank you to everyone for all the kind words and suggestions. They certainly contributed to my approach. The first thing I did was to find a divorce lawyer. I didn't pay a retainer at that time, but just wanted to know what I could about his services. At that point, I still stupidly felt like there could be an explanation for what I had read on her phone, so I decided to confront her before making anything final. It was a bit easier for me to move around on my own, so I told her that I wanted to follow her to work to see how things were going and say hi to the employees. She tried to weakly convince me to just stay at home, saying that she had everything under control, but by then I knew nothing was going to stop me from going. So, about an hour later, I was in the passenger seat, and we were heading to our business location. Most of the guys were super happy to see me, Alex included, though he seemed a lot more awkward than the rest of them. My wife also didn't seem to be super happy that I was there. Towards the end of the workday, I called for Alex to come into my office, and I did that when my wife was somewhere close by. I noticed her freeze up as I did that, and she actually followed Alex into my office, which she normally wouldn't do if it were anyone else. But I didn't tell her to leave. Both of them seemed shifty, though I might have been imagining it. I only asked Alex something about a client we had been dealing with before the accident happened. And I could actually see the fear disappear from his body as he realized I was just asking about something relatively trivial. Once the day ended, I headed back home with my wife, and she was slightly talkative, maybe because she realized or at least assumed that she hadn't been found out. I felt like I had more than enough suspicion at that point to be very direct with her. So I decided that I would do it the next day when she returned from work. Perhaps fortunately for me, the next day was another one of those days when her mood seemed to be better than usual, which triggered me because it made me assume she had just been intimate with my employee minutes before. She was probably made bolder because she felt she had confirmation that I didn't suspect it one bit, but that was just part of what gave me the courage to confront her. Minutes after she walked in, I asked her to sit across from me, and I asked her straight up, "Are you cheating on me with Alex?" She froze, but it wasn't for long. Then she said, "Yes." Right after that, she stood up and headed toward the kitchen. I told her to sit back down and that I wasn't done, but she still went to the fridge to get a silly yogurt cup. Only then did she come back. Honestly, I could already tell she didn't seem to be remorseful based on her behavior. I asked her, "Why? Why did you think that was a good idea?" She went into explaining how she has needs as a woman, and I wasn't providing those needs for her. I pointed out that I had been in a freaking accident, that I still had casts on, and her major concern was that there was no sex. I told her that if she had told me how dire her needs were, we could have found a way to sort things out, at least until I was healed. But she only shook her head and said, "It wouldn't have been the same." Honestly, in that moment, I was lost for words. I was expecting crying and pleading in obvious guilt, but the stupid woman in front of me was trying to justify her cheating. I asked her directly whether she was sorry, and she told me no. She repeated again that she had needs, and I couldn't provide them. It wasn't her fault that she wouldn't deny herself pleasure because I had gotten myself T-boned by an SUV. Yeah, I hate to admit it, but I lost all the cool that I had at that moment. I struggled to my feet and walked over to her in an intimidating way. I didn't raise a fist or anything, but as I approached her, she stood up and shoved me hard. I lost balance and hit our wooden coffee table on the way down. I hit my shoulder, nothing was broken, I eventually confirmed, and I lay on the floor in pain. A few minutes later, I heard the front door close and her car start up and drive away. Yeah, my wife, soon-to-be ex, knocked me over and didn't even check if I was okay. I literally had 2 casts on. It was a few minutes before I could struggle up onto the couch, and my shoulder was in a lot of pain. The first thing I did was call the police because I had actually lost all respect and love for her in that moment. I was seeing red. Apparently, the noise of our argument had woken up my daughter, and she was hiding near the top of the stairs. When she saw me get pushed, she started crying. Seeing her like that broke my heart. She kept asking what had happened between me and her mom, but I didn't know what to tell her. Eventually, the police came, took a report from me, and I was taken to the hospital along with my daughter for an X-ray. Fortunately, there was no lasting damage to my shoulder. Considering I was on the way to recovery, I'd have been pissed if I broke something else. As soon as I got back home that night, I put my daughter to bed and sent a message to the divorce lawyer telling him that I was ready to go ahead with things. Christine hasn't come back home in the 3 days since that happened, and I haven't even contacted her. My daughter keeps asking where her mom is, but I had to make up a stupid excuse that she went to visit her sister. At this point, it's actually war, and I think I have everything I need to make things collapse for Christine. She wasn't sorry for cheating on me, but my goal is to make her sorry. Wow. I mean, yeah, everyone has needs, but here's the thing, bones heal. That's just the kind of thing they do. Not only that, but like you said, there are other ways to make things work out. I guess your wife missed the memo about in sickness and in health and went straight to the in bed with the office assistant option. From filing police reports to prepping the divorce, you're like a one-man vengeance machine. And with your daughter by your side, you've got all the motivation you need to turn this circus into a spectacle. Update. As I'm writing this, which should be the final update of my story, I'm doing so with a big smile on my face. I know it has been months since my last update, but if you're big fans of the sensation we call schadenfreude, you're going to like this one. I know I do. The first thing I did was send text messages to every single one of Christine's relatives that I knew, from her parents to a cousin I had only met twice. I even sent it to the friends whose numbers I had, because I was pissed. I didn't write a single thing that wasn't true, and I even sent them the pictures I had taken of the flirting between her and Alex back then. Some of them responded, and some didn't. The ones who responded were more sympathetic, and I assumed most of those who didn't were on Christine's side. My job there was done. Whether they took her side or not, I made sure her sleazy behavior was well documented. After that, I went into work and met Christine there. She was shocked to see me, probably thinking I was too crushed to do anything. It was barely 10 seconds before I pointed to her and Alex, the employee she had been cheating on me with, and told them they were both fired. She used to be my wife, but she was merely an employee. Her name was nowhere in the business paperwork, and I'm glad I had never brought her in on that extent. Alex was surprised by the suddenness of it all, but he couldn't argue because he knew he was guilty. He had worked for me for 3 years, and he's surely going to have a fun time trying to use me as a reference for his next job. Meanwhile, Christine looked furious. She walked up to me. Honestly, I was scared I was going to get hit again, though that would have worked nicely for me, and when she was at arm's length, I sprung the divorce papers on her. Her face turned red because our employees were there, but I didn't care. She snatched the papers from me and marched out of the place. The rest of the day was awkward, and I had to deal with a lot of cursing and texts from her later once she realized the full extent of the people I had told about her cheating. But wait, my story doesn't end there, it still gets good. Remember the assault? I had a police report and a hospital report, and I went to the police station at the close of business to report things. I told them I wanted to press charges. To skip through things a bit, my divorce lawyer was able to help me structure the case beautifully. As a complete bonus, considering this came after I confronted her for cheating, she was unremorseful, I was injured, and my daughter witnessed it. She got a week in jail and mandatory anger management classes. I hate that my little girl had to get involved a bit, but for me, it was worth it. The criminal record gladdened my heart. Then we got to the actual divorce proceedings. These lasted a long time, especially because Christine was being extremely stubborn throughout the thing, but ultimately, it was a breeze because there was way too much documented proof of bad behavior on my ex-wife's part. I mean, she had assaulted me, which she didn't deny. She had cheated on me, which she didn't deny. And she was very clearly unremorseful about either of those things. My daughter had to see her father assaulted, and again, that killed me. Now, I did mess up by firing her before I finalized the divorce, so I do have to pay a manageable amount of alimony, but only for 5 years. She's not a part of the business I built from the ground up, I have custody of my daughter because her mother's ability to control her temper and not bring strange men around my daughter is in question. I get to keep the house. Why uproot my little girl? I got to expose my wife's behavior to all her friends and family and give her a shiny criminal record. Honestly, I didn't set out to do all this, but she made it work for me. Since she's just naturally a horrible person, I wish I had seen it earlier, but it is what it is. I'm just glad the story is over, and my daughter is safe with me. Life goes on, and I'll try to rebuild eventually, but for now I'm happy with the way things went, and I hope you all are too. Edit, by the way. Alex apparently had the balls to put my name down as a reference, and I made sure to professionally outline all his shortcomings as an employee, including the fact he may try to be inappropriate with the female partners of high-ranking employees. It was fun to hear, "Oh wow, thank you for letting us know that," from the person on the other end. I guess no evil goes unpaid. First off, kudos to you for taking the term "hell hath no fury" like a man scorned to a whole new level. From texting the entire family tree to handing out pink slips like their Halloween candy, you've truly mastered the art of sweet, sweet revenge. And let's not forget the pièce de résistance, pressing charges like a boss, with a police report, a hospital report, and a whole lot of righteous anger. You turned that assault into a one-way ticket to jail for your soon-to-be ex. Talk about turning the tables. But the real cherry on top? That alimony with an expiration date. 5 years of paying for her sins seems like a small price to pay for the satisfaction of seeing her behind bars and your daughter safe and sound by your side. As for Mr. Employee of the Month, well, let's just say he's about to learn the hard way that karma is a real witch. Putting your name down as a reference? Oh, the audacity. But hey, at least you got to professionally outline all his shortcomings and watch him squirm like a worm on a hook. What are your thoughts? Would you have done anything differently? Thank you for joining us today.
Story 3.
Cheaters often leave their search history unattended. Monkey branching, or moving from one relationship to another, is considered cheating. This happened to me about 10 months ago, just before our wedding. She got cold feet, and we almost called off the wedding. She expressed uncertainty about marriage without providing a clear reason. We talked a lot, and I gave her space, and she stayed with her parents for a few days. After a week or two of hesitation, we had a conversation, and she confirmed that she wanted to be together. We got married in the summer of 2021. A few months later, she started a new job, and she became interested in a guy she found funny. She shared many stories about him, and I started feeling uneasy. I met this guy once after work, and he gave off a bad vibe. A couple of weeks later, while I was working late, she was out with coworkers, and she stayed out longer than expected. We shared our locations on her phone. I got nervous when she didn't respond to my texts, so I checked her location, and she was at McDonald's for almost an hour. When she finally returned to my place, she sat outside for about half an hour. I took my dog out, and it turned out the guy drove her home. They were sitting in my driveway, chatting. I approached them, and she got out of the car. He tried to shake my hand when she came in. I told her that was totally unacceptable, and I didn't want them spending one-on-one time like that. She seemed remorseful, saying she overstepped a line and didn't mean anything by it. I believed her because prior to that, I had no reason to suspect any infidelity. A week or two later, toward the end of April, she went on a weekend trip to Colorado with friends who had moved there. When she came back, she was distant. I tried talking to her, but she went to bed early. 3 days later, on my second-to-last day at a difficult job, we went out for drinks after my shift, and I invited her. She came dressed in sweatpants, looking sloppy, acting quiet, not her usual bubbly self, and frankly, a bit rude. At the end of the night, when we got home, I asked her what was wrong. It was like pulling teeth. She finally said she didn't want to be together. I asked why, and she didn't really know. She didn't think we were a good fit. I kept asking her many questions. Is she a lesbian? Is there another guy? She said she didn't know what she wanted in life and couldn't imagine having kids with me if she wasn't certain. I stayed up all night trying to talk to her. She just fell asleep. The next morning, she left. Her Google account was logged in on my computer, and I found searches like, "ended my marriage for another man." She searched for their astrological sign compatibility and song lyrics about the guy on Google in the past month. She came to get her stuff while I was at work, leaving only a Christmas mug that said, "Joy." When we moved into our apartment, we found a sticky note on the wall that said, "Yikes." We kept it up because it was a dingy apartment. and we thought it was funny. She thought it would be funny. Perhaps her affair partner found it amusing to leave the joy mug on my counter with the yikes sticker. I texted her to ask what that was about, and she simply said she thought it would be funny. The divorce was quick and easy, as it was uncontested due to our lack of children. She wasn't interested in keeping our dog, leaving me the apartment and most of my belongings. In that aspect, she showed mercy. During this process, I asked if she believed I wouldn't find out about her cheating. She denied cheating, and in response, I thanked her for leaving. I didn't know what kind of person she was, and I wouldn't want to be married to someone who behaves like she does. Someone who disrespects marriages, frequents strip clubs, and abandons their spouse. This is my first time sharing my story here. Since August, we've had no contact, and honestly, I don't think she cares. I'm slowly reaching a point where I don't care either. It took me a long time to move past the shock. My New Year's resolution is to leave her in the past, stop dwelling on her, and focus entirely on myself. Easier said than done. Since then, I've lost 20 pounds, hit the gym several times a week, and seen muscle gains. I joined a Bible study and attend church weekly. I traveled to Colorado with my brother and have now booked a trip to Europe. I had 6 weddings to attend this year, including my sister's. These were challenging given what happened, but I attended all of them. My new job has been great. I've had many dates, but I haven't found anyone I feel compatible with yet. I'm scared I won't find that person. Part of me is relieved she left. I'm not sure I would have had the strength to leave without knowing she was pursuing something else. If she was disrespectful enough to seek another relationship, she wasn't worth my time or effort. Update. Today is a significant day for all of us. Usually, I don't care much about New Year's, but after a tough year, we all deserve to feel excited about a new hope on the horizon. I hope that 2023 brings peace, healing, and happiness to everyone. My wish is that we all find strength within ourselves to move forward with curiosity and creativity, exploring new paths in our lives. On weekdays, let's practice perseverance and self-forgiveness. On strong days, let's embrace elation and joy. May we have the courage to venture into uncharted territories and the peace to confront our demons. Let's find the power to overcome them and spread love in every place and every face. I hope for authenticity, not only in those around us, but genuine authenticity to rediscover and showcase who we truly are. May 2023 be filled with adventure and growth. Let's climb out of this dreaded abyss and discover not only our true selves, but who we were meant to be. Leave the traitors in 2022. Those who are cowardly, inauthentic, and selfish can stay behind. Find gratitude for everything we have, even the lessons learned from betrayal. Lastly, leave behind the shackles in 2022. Delete remaining pictures and texts. Abandon the need for revenge, checking on people, externalized closure, anger, and sadness. Let's try to let go. Surrender to the present and embrace our destiny. Release the sinking ships to swim freely. Courageously look forward, spread our wings, and soar. This is my prayer for all of us in 2023. Happy New Year to my friends here. We have a community reaction. 7 lie-scoobed wishes all betrayed brighter days in 2023 and beyond. After enduring deep despair and betrayal, we deserve the best, seeking joy and light in our lives. Cheaters just don't fit with joy and light. They belong in the past. Second story. I've been married for 16 and a half years to my 21-year-old wife, and we've had our share of ups and downs. When I first met her, she was the nicest and kindest woman I'd ever encountered. Strangely enough, I told her she would be my wife just 2 minutes after meeting her. Our 2 kids mean the world to me. However, after our second child, she became distant, depressed, and changed. I assumed it was depression, but she refused to explore it and suggested couples counseling. During the recession, when money was tight, I was working 4 jobs and a side business just to make it another month. Affording counseling was challenging, especially when she wouldn't communicate. She'd have good and bad weeks, sometimes being great and other times mean and disrespectful. Eventually, when things stabilized, I urged her to go to counseling with me. Reluctantly, she agreed, but I don't think she enjoyed it. The counselor, however, echoed what I had been saying. I can't fix what I don't know. She requested more help around the house, which I provided. Since 2015, I've worked 3 jobs, managed household chores, and things improved for a while. Yet she became mean again, often snapping at our daughter. Concerned about the impact on our child, I told her I'd never divorce her, committed to making our marriage better for as long as it took. However, I think because my daughter is so much like me, she was taking her anger out on her, and I can't allow that. So if she wanted a divorce, that's what we do. The next day she said she wanted to try and make it work, and for a few years things were good. She even went to a doctor and got prescribed antidepressants, but insisted on the lowest dose. Fast forward to 2020, and she went right back to being mean and disrespectful. Worse, there was total disdain in her voice whenever she spoke to me, and a look of disgust whenever I showed up somewhere. It hurt. Closeness was never a problem with us, and we both seemed to enjoy each other. But when she'd get in those moods, she'd withhold. Still, I remained faithful, even though as a bartender, I had many offers. At one point, my sister assumed I had been cheating because she knew my wife wasn't close for so long. I told her I'd never do that, so now we're here. Last month, after a wedding, we were at a hotel, and I was hoping to fool around when she told me flat out, "I don't want you. I think we should get divorced." We agreed to do it, but hold off until after the holidays for the kids. She fell asleep. 10 minutes later, I laid in bed with tears pouring down my face for 3 hours. I thought it was going to be the most pain I'd ever felt. Then there's today. A week ago, she had to go to a party for my daughter's softball team at midnight. She wasn't home, so I checked our Life 360 app, and she was at an Applebee's. Weird, but I thought she met her friend for a drink after. Thing is, she was there till 1, but they closed at 12. I asked where she went, and she said some bar with the people from the party. Never said Applebee's, which was strange. 2 days later, she said her boss told her she had to put a password on her phone because of work emails. Now, I was suspicious. Today, her mom called and asked if I could help her husband move a rug, so I went to help. When I was done, I stood outside and looked on the Life 360 app to see if she had left work. She had, so I decided to try something. My wife has a bad habit of needing to talk on the phone when she drives, so I called her. She was short and said she had to go because she was talking to her mom, who was standing right in front of me. Okay, I went home. When she got there, I asked how her mom was and if she had told her I had seen her today. She said she hadn't and asked where I saw her. I said, at her house. When I called you, her face dropped. She attempted to give some weak excuses, but eventually confessed that she had been seeing someone for a few months. So, before we decided to get a divorce, I was completely shocked. 10 minutes later, she acted as if nothing had happened. I'm not sure whether it was to avoid tipping off the kids or simply because she didn't care that she hurt me, but I suspect the latter. I couldn't talk to anyone about it because we've kept our decision to divorce a secret. So, my kids didn't catch wind of anything, and we had to attend the Christmas village tonight, so we were out all night. My kids sensed that something was wrong with me, but they just thought I was in a bad mood. My son even said, "You sound hurt. I'm unsure about what I'm going to do." The idea of divorce was already incredibly stressful, and I unintentionally lost 20 pounds in the past month. I need to figure out how to go through this without losing my house. Over the last 15 years, I've been paying off her $10,000 in credit card debt, $15,000 in student loans, and a $44,000 car. Now, I might owe her at least $40,000 for the house. It's going to be painful, but I believe I can handle it. I was finally starting to mentally prepare for the divorce, and then this betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. In the last month, she's hurt me more than I ever thought possible. I don't even recognize the woman I married anymore. I don't know what to do. My daughter is going to be heartbroken when we tell her we're splitting up, but I'm unsure if I should tell her about this because I don't want her to hate her mom. I'm lost, confused, stressed beyond belief, and heartbroken. When I look at my wife, she seems like she couldn't care less. Thanks for listening. Update. It's still not finished, as expected, considering it's only been a few months. So, a week after my post, I discovered the guy's name while she was sending a Facebook message on her computer. Evidently, that's their only way of communicating, most likely because he's married with 3 kids. He's also a doctor and wealthy. That one really hit hard for a guy working 3 jobs to make ends meet. On Christmas, I found out she had informed her entire family, along with my sister and my cousin's wife, that we were divorcing. Meanwhile, I hadn't told anyone yet, fearing it might get back to my kids before the holidays were over. Her mom wasn't happy, thinking she was making the biggest mistake of her life, and the same went for my sister and her best friend. She didn't care. She also omitted the part about her cheating. Of course, I couldn't talk to her mom at Christmas because she was already starting to cry, and I didn't want to alert my kids, so I arranged to talk to her a few days later. The next day, my wife and I had a conversation. I told her I didn't want her seeing the guy until everything was settled. It was disrespectful, and if she wanted a divorce as friends, she shouldn't treat a friend like that. She agreed. Then we discussed how we divide things. I think I did okay. No alimony, no child support, 50-50 custody. We both provide clothes for the kids. Everything else is split equally. I'm keeping the house, but I have to pay her $43,000 in equity. In the end, she walked away with about $40,000. She owes her dad $10,000, an 800 credit score, and zero debt. All thanks to me. When I finally spoke to her mom, I found out that when she learned we were going to talk, she came clean to her. Initially, she lied about cheating when her mom asked, then confessed after my mother-in-law was furious, really laid into her, then cried to me that she was scared I was going to cut her out of my life, which I assured her would never happen. Fast forward to mid-January. Now I've lost 40 pounds. I hit the gym every day to relieve stress. Now we have to break the news to my kids. I told her I wouldn't lie to my kids, but I wasn't going to just expose her either. I said if they asked, I'd try to guide the conversation a different way. She said she felt the same way. The thing is, I knew my daughter wouldn't buy into it. She's like a 14-year-old clone of me. She can spot BS a mile away. And that's exactly what happened. Before we even said anything, my daughter asked if we were getting divorced. When we sat them down, my wife said yes, and my kids lost it. Lots of crying. I saw them crying, and I started crying. Then my wife made a big mistake. She said, "Listen, we both want this." That's when my daughter let her have it, with everything she had. She yelled, "That's BS. My father would never want this. You want this. Look at him. He's crying. I've never seen him cry in my life. This is you." Then she asked if my wife was cheating on me. My wife tried to change the subject, but she wasn't having it. She grilled her while screaming, "Tell me the truth," over and over until my wife confessed. After that, it was like I could see her brain working. She started pointing out every red flag and made my wife confess to it. In 3 minutes, she got more out of her than I did in a month. Later, I had a one-on-one talk with my kids. My 12-year-old son just needed reassurance that things would be okay and change as little as possible. He's dreading when everything finally concludes. My daughter shared that she was crying for me, not herself, because of how hurt I had to be. I comforted her and made her feel better. Then she asked me to make her a promise, since I've never broken a promise to my kids. She requested me to promise that if, after all of this is over, my wife loses her new house and needs a place to stay for a while, I would let her stay here. Despite everything going on, she looked out for her mom. I couldn't refuse. When she talked to her mom, she asked her to promise to stop talking to the guy. However, she broke that promise after 2 weeks. Since then, she's been sneaking around and seeing him for short periods at places like Target. We had a major argument, and again she agreed to stop seeing him, even though she still talks to him. Apparently, she has developed feelings for him now. As I said, my daughter can't be fooled, so she'll eventually realize her mom broke that promise. There's no need for me to tell her right now. Currently, I'm in the process of refinancing my house, and she's searching for a house of her own, with her rich aunt co-signing for her. Hopefully she'll find something soon. Also, one more thing, and I know this might be controversial. Yes, I have evidence. And yes, I know everything about this guy now, but I've decided not to tell his wife. I'm not proud to admit it, but my motives are entirely selfish and self-serving. The fact is, if I tell her, they might get divorced, and then when my wife leaves, she has a ready-made relationship waiting for her. A wealthy guy who, even after divorce, will still be rich, taking her on expensive dates, nice vacations, and helping with her bills. Meanwhile, I'll be struggling. As much as I want to hurt this guy, I want to hurt her more. When she leaves, her sneaking around is over, but his isn't. They won't be able to go on dates, and she'll see how much of a side piece she really is. They'll only be able to meet at her house, and he'll have to leave as soon as he's finished. He won't be giving her any money because it could tip off his wife. Now that she has feelings for him, she'll see if he's willing to leave his wife and family for her. I'm betting he won't, but if he does, fine. He'll have to be the one to have the courage to do it. I'm not going to do his dirty work for him. That's what happened with her rich aunt. She had an affair with a married man, the wife found out and left, and she moved right in, going from a broke single mom to a millionaire. That might happen with my wife, but I'm not going to help make it happen. Update. I assured my kids that I'd keep their lives as stable as possible, and I've stuck to that. In August, we finalized the divorce. While still here, she searched for houses but got outbid 16 times. I discovered a house nearby she liked, spoke to the owner, and he let her have it without other bids. It feels good knowing my kids are just 30 seconds away. The divorce agreement was a win for me. No alimony, no child support, 50-50 custody. I kept the house and paid her the equity, was able to refi before interest rates skyrocketed. Over the next few months, I refurnished my house, focused on my kids, and stayed positive. I continued going to the gym and working. It's been good. I've been friendly with her throughout, which put my kids at ease and helped them get used to everything. She even joined us for Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve at my sister's. People might think I'm crazy, but letting go of ill will and helping my kids celebrate the holidays normally makes me happy. Financially, I'm doing great. I'm unsure about her situation. She wasn't great at budgeting. We're supposed to split costs for the kids, but I end up covering more, which is fine. In December, I met a wonderful woman who lives an hour away, divorced with 2 kids. Due to the custody schedule, we see each other a few times a month, but she makes me happy. I don't know about my ex's dating life or if she's still seeing the guy. I know she's been with others, but I don't ask. One night she went out and got jumped, which, I won't lie, made me laugh. As for the guy she cheated with, I've told some mutual friends. One couple I have friends with saw him with his family at a function and started having a conversation in front of them where they mentioned my name and that I knew about the affair. They said I knew who the guy was but hadn't done anything yet. Then they started saying stuff like, "Man, if he decides to go after him, they won't find that guy's body for 50 years and crap like that." Just laughing and watching him sweat without letting on they knew it was him. I don't think my ex ever told him I knew about the affair, so that was probably a nice surprise for him. I'm sure I'll run into him eventually. Not sure how that will play out, but I'm not going out and seeking it. So, 16 months after D-Day, I have a new girlfriend, a great relationship with my kids, and a happy work life. Physically, I'm in great shape, and financially, I'm doing well. It couldn't have worked out better for me. For those going through it, stay positive. Don't let resentment take over. Work out a deal without lawyers if money is tight. Maintain an amicable relationship for your kids. Exercise to de-stress, and remember every situation is different. Find the path that works for your situation. They're gone, and likely not coming back for your best interest. Trust is gone, so move on and find someone who deserves you. If you don't meet people often, try a dating app like Bumble. They work. Third story. My 37-year-old wife and I, a 38-year-old man, have been married for 13 years, but she had an affair for the past 2 years. I discovered this last week, the night before my grandmother's funeral. I never imagined my wife could deceive me like this, and it's breaking my heart. The husband of my wife's affair partner contacted me on Facebook Messenger to disclose the affair. I was 2 hours away in another state for the funeral, so I held myself together until after the funeral, and then drove home to confront my wife. I sensed that things between us weren't good in early 2021. I noticed a change in my husband's behavior and attitude, which I initially attributed to untreated depression following our dog's passing away in July 2020. He became less loving, we fought more, and he stopped helping around the house. He occasionally used hurtful language during arguments, creating a negative atmosphere at home. I only found relief when he was away for work. Frustrated and unhappy, I began considering leaving him around November 2021, feeling taken advantage of for all the responsibilities I shouldered in our home. Despite not having children, I worked full-time and managed 85% of the household chores. His main tasks, when not traveling for work, were playing with our dogs and doing his own laundry, while I handled the rest. During this time, my husband experienced strange physical pains and ailments, initially thinking he had a heart attack, but discovering it was a panic attack. These pains reappeared in different areas, including headaches, stomach aches, and rashes. Despite doctor clearance after tests, the pain would resurface in new forms. I suggested therapy for potential anxiety, depression, and hypochondria, but he refused, convinced he was dying of cancer, creating daily frustration. When the affair partner's husband contacted me, I realized my husband's supposed illnesses were likely a response to the guilt and stress from the affair. He carried on this affair for 2 years, having closeness during work trips and coordinating meetings at hotels. This happened twice, once paid by her and once by my husband on a credit card I couldn't access. They communicated through a fake Facebook Messenger account, exchanging explicit photos and sometimes having cyber relationship. After confronting him about the affair, my husband admitted to additional medical tests due to fears of contracting an STD, unknown to me. Our attachment declined since 2021 as he feared transmitting something to me. I'm devastated not only by the affair, but also by how he treated me during these 2 years. I feel betrayed and taken advantage of for maintaining our home while working. Although we moved states around May this year, no longer living near the woman, they remained in contact. They met in early December during her work trip to our new area. My husband claims they only talked in the car, refusing a hotel, and her story aligns with his. I'm incredibly upset and hurt, crying every day and struggling to eat. This morning, I scheduled an appointment next week to see a therapist and a divorce attorney consultation in the upcoming weeks. My husband is saying sorry, claiming he'll do anything to keep me and be a better spouse. He's been shedding tears, using the typical lines you often hear when someone gets caught. Although he insists I'm not to blame, he can't provide a reason for the affair. I find it challenging to overcome not only the lying and deception, but also how I was mistreated for nearly 2 years. 6 months ago, I suggested marriage counseling, and he responded by telling me I needed therapy. Fortunately, I have the support of my family and some close, trusted friends. However, I live thousands of miles away from everyone, so I feel alone in this. We recently bought our home last year when we moved, and I'm uncertain about the cost of getting out of this mortgage. Due to my grandmother's passing, I am set to inherit a decent amount of money, slightly more than my annual income, in about 6 to 8 weeks when we finalize her accounts. I won't be putting this money in any account with his name or access. I plan to inform the attorney I'm consulting with about this financial aspect. Over the last 2 years, I feel like I've been worn down, and this affair has now completely shattered me. While I believe I can handle this on my own, I've spent 15 years with this person, supposed to be my best friend. I've prioritized his career over mine, relocating across the country for him. I'm scared of making the wrong decision, but my gut feeling tells me to leave this deceitful person.
Story 4.
At the core of the U.S. entertainment industry, Ascendant Entertainment Enterprises swiftly adjusted to evolving standards. The pandemic had transformed the work environment, transitioning from conventional office spaces to online platforms. The #MeToo movement had unveiled countless scandals throughout corporate and creative sectors, placing AEE, among others, under strict judicial supervision to maintain a respectful and secure workplace. This heightened scrutiny, influenced by cases like Harvey Weinstein's, demanded an emphasis on openness and mutual respect in the work culture. During this period of change, Doug Showalter, CEO of AEE, faced the complex task of steering the company through both financial and ethical obstacles. He bore the essential responsibility of finding equilibrium between the two, especially with AEE's leading showrunner Tyler Sherman directing The Captain, a highly rated drama that had significantly boosted the network's position in the competitive streaming landscape. The popularity of The Captain and its spin-offs not only drove Ascendant's ratings to new heights, but also played a key role in revitalizing the company's reputation after a challenging few years. Doug Showalter, CEO of AEE, noticed the soft ding signaling a Teams message had arrived. "Your 10 o'clock is here." In the past, this would have come through on an intercom, but since the pandemic, everything ran through Teams, email, or Slack. Every employee, from Showalter down, was expected to use only these channels for one communication to allow full monitoring by the courts. No texts, and certainly no Snapchats. Once again, Doug silently cursed his predecessor, whose history of inappropriate behavior towards women surfaced during the same #MeToo wave that sent Harvey Weinstein to jail. The court kept Ascendant under close watch to guarantee a secure environment for women in the workplace. A balance had to be struck between ensuring safety and achieving profitability, two aims that often conflicted. Fortunately, Doug was managing both, and although inappropriate behavior entirely stamped out, it was steadily diminishing, largely thanks to creative talents like his upcoming guest. "Bring them in, Jocelyn." Doug rose and circled his desk. The guest had grown too significant to AE's success to leave unwelcomed at the entrance. Jocelyn guided two men through the doorway and into Doug's expansive contemporary office, filled with light and overlooking the hills encircling Los Angeles. "Tyler, great to see you, my friend. Good morning, Andy," he greeted the two men. Tyler was Tyler Sherman, the mastermind and executive producer of the top-rated scripted television series on air. Alongside him was Andy Daniels, senior vice president of streaming at Ascendant. Doug guided them to the white leather seating area in the corner. "What can I get you guys? Coffee? Cola?" Both men declined, so Jocelyn smiled and told them to let her know if they needed anything. Though stunning, Jocelyn was very professional, but her amazing figure was hard to ignore. Doug noticed that neither Tyler nor Andy glanced at her as she walked away. Times are definitely changing, he thought with satisfaction. "So Tyler, how's everything at the ranch?" The ranch referred to was the Straight Flush Ranch in Central Texas, the backdrop for Tyler's hit TV show, The Captain, a dramatized tale of Scottish sea captain Angus McQueen, who traded the sea for ranching. The McQueen Ranch was the largest in the U.S., sprawling over 800,000 acres, although some ranches in Argentina and Australia surpassed it. While some scenes were filmed at McQueen Ranch, most were shot at the Straight Flush Ranch owned by Tyler. Previous stories about McQueen Ranch had been filmed, but The Captain was made with the full support of the McQueen family. Their branded merchandise was selling well, and they retained all merchandising rights through their contract with Ascendant. They were pleased with the deal, which helped make The Captain the most popular show on TV. Tyler had even created successful spin-offs for Ascendant's streaming service, boosting their position in the streaming wars. "Well, we just wrapped," Tyler said with a drawl. Despite 2 decades in Hollywood, he still had the demeanor of a ranch kid. In his early 40s, tall and ruggedly handsome, he had tried acting with little success until he became a screenwriter. 2 of his first 3 screenplays were nominated for Oscars, and one he directed gained a strong streaming following, leading to a production deal with AEE. "We just have to finish editing the last 3 episodes," he added. Andy asked if they were on track for the premiere of the first episode. Tyler confidently replied that there had never been any doubt. Doug expressed his excitement for the start of the show, leaning back in his chair and observing Tyler's slight smirk. He then inquired about what was really on Tyler's mind. Tyler grinned and stated that he was going to need $200 million from them, give or take. In disbelief, Andy's jaw dropped as he asked if it was really $200 million. Tyler confirmed that it was indeed give or take. "That's a big number, even for you," Doug remarked. Tyler was talented, but costly. Most of his series were filmed on his Texas ranch, where he charged a daily fee. Every cow and horse used in production came with a daily rate, as did every wrangler, veterinarian, and cowboy extra, all billed to production costs. Even the farrier was included. While Tyler was making a fortune, no one at AEE complained because of his results, which is why he wasn't surprised by his VP's shock. "What do you have in mind?" Tyler reached into his leather messenger bag and pulled out 2 trade paperbacks, handing one to Doug and Andy. "The lawyers?" Doug read aloud. $200 million for a TV show about lawyers? Andy groaned. He believed in supporting their top talent. But lawyers? "Not just any lawyers, specifically Bonham McLeod Garcia," Tyler said. "No," Andy replied. "Yes," Doug said, surprising Andy. "B. McG. We've worked with them in Texas for local representation. They're big, good, and incredibly expensive." Doug recalled their past dealings, including when BM McG initially declined to represent AEE in a wrongful death suit until they proved the extra's intoxication led to the incident. They're the oldest law firm in Texas and one of the oldest in the U.S. Congressmen, senators, Supreme Court justices, and even a vice president have come from B. McG. Their reputation for honesty and integrity is unmatched, Tyler explained. Doug nodded but asked, "How does that make compelling TV? Why would people tune in to watch Texas lawyers?" Tyler pointed to the books. "That's my source material and it's solid." Doug thumbed through the novel. "Give me the elevator pitch." 2 brothers, James and Robert Bonham, moved to Texas from South Carolina in 1834. They opened their law office in what's now Austin and quickly joined the movement for Texas independence. They eventually parted ways. Robert fought alongside General Sam Houston and became a lieutenant, while James aligned with their cousin, Colonel William Travis, and became a major. Doug raised his finger to pause Tyler. Travis was the commander of the Alamo with Bowie and Crockett, right? Tyler nodded. Bonham left the Alamo on a mission for Travis. He slipped through the Mexican army to deliver a message to Sam Houston, and then returned to fight and die with his comrades. After Texas gained independence, Robert resumed practicing law, married, and had kids. His oldest daughter married a Scottish immigrant named Alexander MacLeod, who learned the law and eventually became a partner. And the G? Garcia? Gary asked. Tomas Antonio Garcia. His father saved Robert's life at the Battle of San Jacinto, where the Texans defeated Santa Anna. After his father was liquidated in the battle, Robert paid for Tomas and his sister Angelica's education. Thomas studied law and joined Bonham MacLeod, later forming B. McG. Robert was only 10 years older than Angelica, and after his first wife died in childbirth, he married her. Quite the incestuous law firm, huh? Andy quipped. Tyler raised an eyebrow, and Doug looked at Andy, slightly annoyed. Realizing Tyler was passionate about this project, Andy raised his hands in surrender. The book traces the firm through Texas's growth from a republic to statehood, covering slavery, the Civil War, Reconstruction, cattle empires, the oil and gas boom, and the space race into the 1960s. They're just as powerful, if not more so, than they were 50 years ago. Their story is deeply Texan. Can you think of another law firm whose attorneys have been involved in gunfights with bandits, rustlers, and Comancheros? Wow, Andy said. That sounded much more exciting than watching a Wall Street lawyer discuss arbitrage. Any surprise casting choices? Doug asked. Tyler had stunned Hollywood with his casting in one of the Captain's spin-offs. He chose retired two-time Super Bowl champion quarterback Kyle Kinsler and his wife, Megan Bond Kinsler, a retired U.S. women's soccer captain. They had appeared in commercials and guest spots on sitcoms, but they weren't actors and didn't claim to be. They agreed to the roles thinking it would be fun, but Tyler put them through a 6-month acting class and a month of cowboy training for their 19th century roles. Critics agreed they both performed well, Kyle more convincingly than Megan, but their on-screen chemistry was electric. Tyler shrugged slightly. Mark Tibbs has signed on to play James Bonham in the first 2 episodes. You got Mark Tibbs, Andy exclaimed, thrilled. Tibbs had recently won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Can you extend his role? Since he dies at the Alamo, no. Once he's dead, he's dead. No Alamo zombies planned, Tyler replied deadpan. Who do you have for Robert? Doug asked. I have a few ideas for young Robert, but it depends on who I cast as older Robert. I've got someone in mind, and if that works out, I'll decide on young Robert then. Tyler casually examined his fingernails before dropping his big news. Maria Elena Montoya is signed on to play Robert's wife, Angelica. Both Doug and Andy stared at Tyler in shock. How? They asked in unison. She supposedly retired after her husband died. Isn't she in seclusion? Doug asked. Maria Elena Montoya was the daughter of the youngest sister of King Juan Tomás Vega Montoya of Spain. After college, she modeled in Paris and London before finding her passion in acting. She took her new craft seriously, attending drama classes and auditioning for off-Broadway plays. Nominated for 2 Academy Awards, she was expected to win eventually, until the accident. While pregnant with her first child, her husband, F1 driver Jean-Pierre Degas, died in a crash at the Bahrain Grand Prix. Maria witnessed the incident and immediately knew he was dead, miscarrying that night. She was flown back to Spain heavily sedated and had been in seclusion for 3 years, avoiding public appearances. Her agent had declined all requests until Christmas, when she was photographed attending Mass with the Spanish royal family, her first public appearance since her husband's memorial. Tyler's casual mention of her return to acting through his TV series left Doug and Andy stunned. Wow, okay, I think we're ready to move forward. And your source material, it's solid? Doug asked, picking up the book. Who is this author, Jack MacLeod? Is he related to the MacLeod of B. McG? Tyler nodded. He is related. The family usually goes into law or the military. Doug glanced at the short author biography on the back cover. Following his retirement from the military, General Jack MacLeod started instructing history at Central Texas State University. This marks his debut novel. Doug inquired if it was much of a bio. Tyler replied that the author had a Wikipedia page and suggested Doug check it out. Doug then pulled his iPhone from his suit jacket pocket and began tapping on it. After a moment of reading, his eyebrows shot up in surprise. He laughed. commenting that the author was the real deal. Tyler simply nodded in agreement. Jack and Kathy McLeod home, Round Rock, Texas. Jack McLeod, Brigadier General USA retired, was thrilled and eager to share the news with his wife. Unless you knew him well, his excitement might go unnoticed, but a brief half-smile gave it away. Throughout his military career, he had mastered controlling his emotions, so this flicker of a grin felt like pure joy. A TV series, he thought. They want to adapt my book into a TV show. And it was Tyler Sherman, the highly successful TV producer. Jack didn't watch much television, but enjoyed The Captain, a captivating show despite its soap opera elements. After receiving a call from his agent, Alex Cordell, Jack canceled his classes for the day, a rare occurrence that left his colleagues at Central Texas State University speculating about the reason. Was it related to the military or personal? Students were just pleased to have an unexpected free hour. Meanwhile, Jack hurried home to share his exciting news with his wife. The sight of the red Corvette in the driveway tightened his stomach. The personalized license plate, De Bull, stirred anxiety he hadn't felt since combat. Having to park on the street irritated him, prompting Jack to confront the situation head-on. He opened the front door and stepped inside. Noticing the living area was empty, he paused to listen. Soon he heard sounds coming from the master bedroom. As he neared the bedroom, unmistakable sounds confirmed his worst fears. Kathy was with another man in an intimate moment, one hand tangled in her hair as she gasped out encouragement. The bedroom reeked of infidelity. Kathy looked up in shock as she saw Jack standing in the doorway, his face reflecting a mix of disbelief and anger. The man, seemingly unbothered by Jack's presence, continued, offering a smug look in Jack's direction. Kathy scrambled to her knees, saying, "Danny, stop it!" At least she appeared somewhat embarrassed as she reached for her robe. Jack had seen her without clothes countless times, yet now she was hiding from him, not from her lover. "Jack, I'm sorry you had to see that. I wanted to tell you differently," she said. Jack felt his anger rising and focused on controlling it to avoid confronting the smug man beside her. Danny had the build of a football lineman, out of shape and covered in body hair. "Danny, wait for me in the car. I'll be out in a minute," she instructed. "Are you sure, babe? I can wait right here," he replied, continuing to smirk insolently at Jack. Kathy smiled at Danny, assuring him, "I'll be okay. Jack won't cause any problems, will you?" She shot a glare at Jack. Jack looked at Kathy with disgust. "Yeah, no worries there. I wouldn't touch her. You can take her with you. I never want to see either of you again." A flash of anger crossed Kathy's face. "Really, Jack? After 20 years of marriage, that's the respect you show me?" Jack maintained a neutral expression, ignoring her question. "I'm not going to ask why or how long. Just get out, pack your things and leave." Kathy nodded. "That's our plan. I hope to break this to you gently. I'm leaving you for Danny. He'll give me a better life than you ever could." She grabbed a couple of suitcases from her closet and started packing her clothes. "I thought you had so much potential. I believed you were going places and would earn a 3rd or 4th star. I pictured a future for us in D.C. Instead, you capped out at Brigadier, retired, and took a teaching job," Kathy said, shaking her head in disbelief. "How could you expect me to settle for this? 20 years as an army wife, and this is my reward?" She gestured toward their modest house. "I need more than this. I need more than you." She continued packing her suitcase. "I'm not having this conversation. Just leave. My attorney will reach out about the divorce," Jack replied. Kathy sighed. "Fine. You'll probably try to embarrass me, but I'm leaving you for a much better opportunity. Danny De Bullard played in the NFL and owns the largest Chevy dealership in Texas. He'll give me the life you never could. It may not be as glamorous as being a senator's wife, but I'll manage. I don't expect you to be happy for me, but don't act like a petulant child. It doesn't suit you." Jack regarded her with the flat expression he reserved for prisoners of war. She was now the enemy. He turned away from his soon-to-be ex-wife and walked to the bar, pouring himself a couple of fingers of bourbon. When he turned around, he saw Danny sitting in his chair. "Get out of my house, you miserable piece of trash," Jack said. Danny stood up and laughed mockingly. "Hey, I get it. Finding out you're a betrayed man must be a shock. I'll leave when I'm ready." Jack stepped closer, and Danny's eyes widened in fear as he realized the danger he was in. Jack's expression revealed a glimpse of his own mortality. Danny raised his hands and quickly backed away. Kathy rushed into the living room. Jack was calmly sipping his bourbon while Danny pressed himself against the wall, pale and shaken. "Damn it, Jack! Act like an adult, not a child who had his toy taken away," she exclaimed. "I told him to leave, and now I'm telling you the same. Go! Now! We're going. Danny, get my bags. This could have gone smoothly, Jack, but you want to make it hard. Fine, we'll do it the hard way. Danny exited the bedroom with Kathy's suitcases, smirking at Jack, his confidence restored with Kathy by his side. Don't feel bad. The better man won. Jack replied, Congratulations. You won the prize. A cheating wife. What a prize. He shook his head in disgust. Danny glanced at Jack and then at Kathy. His swagger diminished. He walked out without another word. Kathy glared at Jack. You'll pay for that, you jerk. I'll get the rest of my things later. She slammed the front door behind her. Jack took a sip of bourbon, reflecting on how a day that started so well had spiraled into chaos. He sighed and reached for his cell phone. It was time to call his daughter Kelsey and inform her about the divorce. Jonathan Jack McLeod was not your typical Army officer. After losing both parents in high school, he was raised by his grandfather, Lonnie Boudreau, a Cajun oil refinery worker known for his unpredictable behavior. Upon graduating, Jack enlisted as soon as he turned 18, starting as an E-1 private in infantry. His test scores and performance in basic training allowed him to qualify for jump school and ranger school. By the time he got orders for Fort Bragg, he had been promoted to private first class, E3, and wore both jump wings and a ranger tab. He enrolled part-time at Fayetteville State University, allowing him to take classes on base or through correspondence. By the end of July 1990, he had settled into a routine until Iraq invaded Kuwait on August 2nd. During Operation Desert Storm, Jack was deployed to Kuwait and then Iraq, where he earned a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart for an incident he found embarrassing. He returned to Fort Benning a week later, thinking it wouldn't be his last time in that part of the world. Jack earned a BA in history over 6 years while being promoted to Sergeant, E5. He decided to apply for Officer Candidate School and was accepted. OCS was easy for him due to his experience as a junior non-commissioned officer. After completing the 12-week course, he was promoted to second lieutenant and received his gold bars without family present. He received orders for Fort Bragg for his first assignment as a platoon leader with the 82nd Airborne. After 8 years and a promotion to first lieutenant, Jack met Kathy Bascom, while she was bartending at an Irish pub. He was immediately captivated by her beauty. They quickly made plans for a date and became inseparable. Jack excelled in the Army, earning a master's in American history and starting his PhD, considering teaching after retirement. On September 11, 2001, he was a major commanding a company in the 82nd Airborne, and soon after, they were mobilized for Afghanistan. This conflict was unlike previous wars, where anyone could be a friend or enemy. Jack received the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions at the Unai Pass in Maidan Wardak province. Although originally nominated for the Medal of Honor, his recommendation was downgraded due to concerns about giving out too many medals early in the conflict. Bravery often meant accepting that today is a good day to die. When his platoon was pinned down, Jack charged the attackers, killing 6 Afghan fighters and wounding 4, which broke the enemy's will. An embedded journalist witnessed this, briefly making Jack famous, a situation he disliked, but Kathy enjoyed. She often sent him news links, which he ignored, and his fame quickly faded. Upon returning home, Jack proposed to Kathy, and they were quietly married by the battalion chaplain. He served 2 tours in Iraq, earning a Silver Star in his first tour and a second Bronze Star and Purple Heart in his second tour. After leaving the military, Jack resumed his PhD studies while he and Kathy started a family. Their daughter Kelsey was born nearly 9 months after Jack's first tour. Kathy loved Kelsey, but wished she resembled her more, as Kelsey had Jack's blonde hair and gray eyes. By age 43, Jack had 25 years of service and was a lieutenant colonel commanding a battalion. He completed his dissertation titled Texas Statehood as a Reflection of the Success of the Bonham McLeod Garcia Law Firm, which examined the firm's influence on Texas. Jack, distantly related to its founders, had access to extensive historical documents during a 3-year posting at Fort Hood. As Jack considered retirement, he learned he was at the top of the promotion list for colonel. This unexpected news indicated that his Distinguished Service Cross should have been a Medal of Honor. He decided to remain in the Army and was offered a teaching position at the United States Military Academy at West Point. At West Point, Jack discovered a passion for teaching and thrived in the academic setting. Kathy enjoyed meeting many prominent politicians and media figures, as the Academy frequently hosted distinguished guests, including the President of the United States. After 3 years at West Point, Jack was on the list for Brigadier General and received orders to take command of a brigade at Fort Benning. He quickly realized that the U.S. Army was highly political, and the backstabbing among general officers left him disillusioned, prompting his decision to retire and explore new opportunities. After completing his dissertation, Jack turned his thesis into a novel, resulting in his first book, The Lawyers, which was published by a small Austin publisher. While it wasn't expected to be a bestseller, it established him as a published author, making him an attractive hire for many universities. Central Texas State University was eager to bring on a retired Army general with a PhD and a published work. Kathy was very upset about the move to Texas, feeling it diminished her prestige and destroyed her envisioned future in D.C., planting the seeds of discontent. "You have to be kidding me," Kelsey exclaimed. "Mom was cheating on you in your own bed?" Jack could hear the heartbreak in her voice. "Are you going to divorce her? Can you forgive her?" Jack sighed. "She wants the divorce just as much as I do. She's moving to Dallas to be with her boyfriend. I'll be serving her with papers soon. I know Mom can be difficult, but I never thought she could be this awful. Just know I'm here for you, Dad. I'm on Team McLeod. She can be Team Bascom or Team Bullard or whatever, but I'm always on your side. I appreciate that, baby, and I'm proud to have you as my daughter. I don't expect you to cut your mother out of your life. She is your mom, after all. I won't try to alienate you, too. She was an okay mom, but never a great one. She's always been selfish. I can't believe she's with that used car salesman. I've seen his commercials. He's gross. What is she thinking, Dad?" "I don't know, Kels, but he's her problem now." Jack talked a bit longer with Kelsey about school. She was in her freshman year at West Point, following in his footsteps to become an Army officer. This decision further angered Kathy, who would be living in Texas while her daughter was moving across the country for college. Life went on for Jack, as it does for most people if they're lucky. He filed for divorce citing adultery, while Kathy countersued for mental cruelty and misuse. She had to admit there was no evidence for her claims, while Jack produced sealed sheets from the day he caught her with the used car salesman. Even though it was a no-fault state, proof of adultery affected support, which was denied to Kathy. Kathy requested half of Jack's Army pension, but since they had only been married for 20 of his 30 years of service, she was entitled to up to 1/3 at the judge's discretion. Because of the adultery evidence, this was reduced to 10%, further enraging Kathy. The divorce was granted, and Kathy was completely cut out of Jack's life. Kelsey refused to contact her mother, blocking her on social media and ignoring her wedding invitation, which only fueled Kathy's anger toward Jack. What would upset Kathy the most, driving her nearly insane with anger and jealousy, was a new chapter that hadn't even begun yet. At the Straight Flush Ranch, 125 miles west of Austin, Texas, Tyler Sherman extended his hand to greet his guests, saying, "It's a true honor to meet you, General McLeod." Jack was accompanied by his attorney and agent, Alex Cordell, who led the entertainment law division of Bonham McLeod Garcia LLP, known as B. McG. "Please call me Jack. I've been looking forward to this meeting, too." They shook hands, quickly sizing each other up. Both tall and lean, they shared rugged good looks that turned heads. As fellow Texans, they had lived in different parts of the country. Tyler had dark hair sprinkled with gray and designer stubble. Jack had changed since his divorce. Gone was the buzz-cut and clean-shaven look he had sported for nearly 40 years. He now had collar-length blonde hair, which he described as country singer long, with a hint of gray. He also had grown a dark blonde mustache with no gray, making him look at least 10 years younger than his 52 years. Having seen many soldiers age prematurely, Jack was surprised that letting his hair and mustache grow had revitalized his appearance. "Can I get you guys something to drink?" Tyler gestured to a bar cart in the corner. After they declined, he led them to a seating area in his office, a luxurious pole barn on his ranch, designed with a stylish mix of ranch house and upscale decor. Once seated, Tyler initiated the discussion. "You've had the proposals for a week. What do you think?" Alex spoke for Jack. "Let's address the issue with Bonham, McLeod Garcia. We agree to the proposal in principle, but with one change." "I'm sure I can guess," Tyler replied dryly. "Why don't you tell me anyway?" "We want to retain merchandise rights," Alex stated. "I told Ascendant that wouldn't work when they added it to the contract. B. McG retaining merch rights isn't a deal breaker. Other than that, we're good?" "Absolutely. Now let's talk about Jack. $250,000 seems low for the television rights, even with the EP credit. How many seasons do you expect this show to run? And why not let Jack write the scripts?" "That amount is standard for a first-time author with little recognition. The EP credit will pay off significantly for foreign syndication. Jack, your cut as an EP could exceed $1 million per season, and we believe there's enough material for 4 seasons. As for writing the scripts," Tyler shook his head, "I write them all. You'll read them and can suggest changes, but I have final say on every word. End of story." Alex glanced at Jack and shrugged. It's your choice, but it's a good deal for you. I want to make a few minor changes, but overall, I think you should go for it. Tyler added, there's one more thing I want to mention. Have you heard about the casting? Alex was aware of the buzz. Casting Mark Tibbs was significant, but Maria Elena Montoya had caused a stir in Hollywood. Her casting was the biggest news in a decade. Jack nodded. Mark Tibbs for James Bonham and Maria Elena Montoya for Angelica Bonham, Robert's wife. Who are you casting as Robert Bonham? Tyler shifted in his seat, releasing some tension. I have someone in mind for the role. He's not a professional actor, and I'm not sure about his experience, but he has the looks, charisma, and presence. I think he would be a natural. He paused and leaned back in his chair. Okay, Alex said. Now that you have our interest, who is it? In response, Tyler handed Alex and Jack a sheet of paper. Alex's eyes widened as he quickly realized Tyler's intent, while Jack looked confused. This is my Wikipedia entry. After a moment, Jack understood. No, not just no, but absolutely not. Jack, you're perfect for the role. You have the looks and charisma. I know you're not an actor, but if I can turn a football player and a soccer player into respectable actors, I can do the same with you. First off, I'm too old to start acting. I'd look ridiculous. Let me counter that, Tyler said. Did you ever see John Wayne in True Grit? When Jack nodded, Tyler continued. When Wayne made that movie, he was the same age as Tom Cruise when he finished filming the last Mission Impossible. And you're almost a decade younger than Cruise. Also, think of Audie Murphy, the most decorated soldier of World War II. He won every medal for bravery from every Allied country. He became an actor and even starred in the movie version of his autobiography playing himself. You'll be fine, Jack. If a Texas boy like Audie Murphy can act, I know you can. But, Jack stammered, searching for a rebuttal, but struggling to find one. He finally glanced at Alex, who was trying to suppress his laughter. At the Gables on the Creek restaurant in Turtle Creek, Dallas, Texas, Tyler Sherman extended his hand, saying, It's a real pleasure to meet you, General McLeod. Kathy was amazed at her good fortune. Just 3 months into her marriage to Jack, opportunities were already coming her way. When Carolyn Collier called to arrange a lunch meeting, she thought there must be some mistake. Carolyn was a prominent figure in Dallas society, married to the owner of Collier Petroleum, and had invited Kathy to discuss the annual Beef and Oil Gala, the most exclusive event in Dallas, akin to New York's Met Gala, attracting every influential Texan and celebrity. Please call me Kathy, she said, exchanging a light kiss on the cheek with Carolyn. And I'm Carolyn, she replied, though only close friends called her Carrie. She doubted Kathy would ever earn that privilege, but time would tell. Once seated, a server came to take their drink orders, and Kathy, following Carolyn's lead, ordered a Chardonnay. We were surprised to hear that Danny Bullard got married. Everyone thought he was a confirmed bachelor, Carolyn remarked. We kept our relationship private. I'm not one to share my personal life, Kathy explained. Carolyn studied her, skeptical. She recalled a line from Julius Caesar about Cassius's lean and hungry look. Carolyn sensed there was more to Kathy's story, but chose not to dig deeper. A wife's background wasn't always a deal-breaker. That's great, Carolyn said, shifting topics. Are you familiar with the Beef and Oil Gala, the Bog? Yes, of course. It's famous. Everyone important attends, Kathy replied. True, but it's a charity fundraiser. We raise about $10 million each year. I've chaired it for the last 10 years, and my co-chair, Lorena Garcia Marquez, wants to step back this year to focus on her family. You had a Mexican girl as your co-chair? Kathy asked, surprised, reconsidering the significance of the Bog. Carolyn narrowed her eyes at Kathy. Lorena is Texas royalty. Her great-great-great-grandfather fought at the Battle of San Jacinto for Texas independence. Her great-great-grandfather co-founded one of Texas's oldest law firms, and she's a partner at Bonham McLeod Garcia, as is her husband. She is not just some Mexican girl. Kathy felt embarrassed, realizing her mistake. Did Carolyn know about her past with a McLeod and the book that inspired a rumored TV series? I'm sorry. That came out wrong. She sounds impressive, and I'd love to meet her someday. Carolyn regarded Kathy with suspicion, but decided to give her the benefit of the doubt, wondering if Kathy was simply nervous or unaware of her biases, which was common among many Dallas wives. Anyway, we need someone who can bring fresh energy and sponsorship to the Beef and Oil Gala. We start planning for next year's event right after the last one. Now we're getting to it, Kathy thought. She realized Carolyn was seeking a significant sponsorship. What amount are you looking for? Carolyn initially sought a $250,000 sponsorship, but, gauging Kathy's vibe, increased the figure. How about $300,000? Kathy gasped. That was a substantial sum. She knew she couldn't commit without discussing it with Danny first. "I need to talk to my husband," she replied. "Of course, take your time. But consider the doors this could open for you. You're new to Dallas society, and it can be hard to break into the right circles. This could really set you up." Carolyn knew how to appeal to social climbers. "Now let's enjoy this tuna nikoi, shall we?" In the executive offices of Phoenix Financial in Austin, Texas, Michael Sullivan, CEO, welcomed Danny Bullard into his office, motioning for him to sit at the desk. "Hi, Danny. Good to see you again," he said. Some dealers were taken to the seating area, but Danny's presence was more of a power play. Michael wasn't fond of Danny and wanted the meeting to end quickly. He had agreed to see him only because Danny had driven from Dallas to Austin without an appointment. After exchanging pleasantries, Michael asked how he could help. "Our dealer participation agreement is up for renewal in 6 months," Danny said. "I want to discuss an early renewal." As the CEO of Phoenix Financial, Michael typically left dealer negotiations to his sales team. He only got involved with larger dealerships or those with whom he had long-standing relationships. Danny was neither. He was a former football player who seemed to think his past entitled him to the CEO's attention. "We can discuss that," Michael replied, typing on his computer. "Year to date, your finance and insurance product sales are down 10%, and your loss ratio is up 20%. What's going on?" Danny's face flushed at the critique. He had always viewed Michael as a pencil-pushing accountant, detached from the real world. If Danny had looked around Michael's office, he might have noticed the Golden Gloves trophies and military photos that showcased Michael's accomplishments. But he likely didn't. As for the decline in business, we're in a down cycle. Car sales in Dallas are either flat or down at most dealerships. It happens. We'll rebound in a few months. Regarding the loss ratio, we lost our service manager a few months back, and I'm juggling managing the service department along with the dealership. It's overwhelming, but I have interviews lined up for a new service manager soon, which should help with the loss ratio. Danny knew this issue would arise. The loss ratio compared extended warranty sales to the total claims made. Problems occurred when service departments inflated claims, reporting 2 needed tie rods instead of 1, for instance. Michael considered the situation. Phoenix Financial provided incentives for dealerships to sell their F&I products through no-interest loans, paid back with those sales. Danny had received a $5 million loan when their agreement was signed, and now he wanted to secure another loan as their contract expired in 6 months. "Given your declining sales and increasing loss ratio, I can extend your dealer override to $2 million, but I can't go higher," Michael said. Danny was dissatisfied. "Even with sales down, we're still the largest GM dealership by volume in the Southwest. I was hoping for a $10 million override." Michael shook his head. "That's not feasible. I might consider $3 million, but we would need guarantees and safeguards in the contract." Danny wasn't pleased, but knew he had little choice. He needed cash immediately, and Phoenix Financial was his best option. Exploring a new finance company would take months, and he needed funds now. Damn the beef and oil gala. On the set of the Lawyers TV show at Straight Flush Ranch, 125 miles west of Austin, Texas, Tyler Sherman approached Jack. "Are you settling in okay, Jack?" Tyler Sherman asked. "Have you met the other talent yet?" Jack McLeod shook his head. "What am I doing here, Tyler? 6 years ago, I was teaching history at West Point, and a year ago at CTSU. Now I'm supposed to convince people I'm an actor? You must be really desperate if I'm the best you can find." Tyler laughed. "Don't forget, I saw your screen tests. I was there for them. You're a natural actor. I've seen this with military leaders. Part of being a leader is playing the role. If you excel at it, your soldiers follow you. If not, they won't trust you. Like I said, you're a natural." With that, Tyler waved and wandered off. Jack leaned back in his chair, his name printed on the back like in the movies, and took in his surroundings. He had met the cast during table reads and was impressed by their professionalism. This was not the entitled group often described in Hollywood gossip. Everyone arrived on time, ready to work with their lines memorized. Mark Tibbs effortlessly switched from his British accent to a Southern one for his role as James Bonham. Jack had lost much of his Texas twang over the years, but his accent still passed muster. The biggest surprise was Maria Elena Montoya. Everyone was aware of her tragic story and treated her with care. Despite being away from acting for 3 years, she was the first on set and the last to leave, always ready to help anyone, from the gaffer to the caterer. When Jack first met her at the table read, she smiled and said she had enjoyed his novel. He initially doubted her sincerity, but then she stunned him with her next words. "To understand Angelica better, I wanted to get into her head. I had my agent request a copy of your dissertation, and I read that too. It gave me deeper insight into who Angelica is. Maria Elena was not just a pretty face reciting lines. She was not merely the niece of the King of Spain or the widow of an F1 driver. She was a complex and intelligent woman with a near-genius IQ. She could comfortably discuss everything from Parisian fashion to quantum computing and was well-read and articulate on various topics. Jack found himself smitten with the 35-year-old actress, but knew he needed to keep his distance to avoid embarrassing himself. Jack's first scene with Maria was in episode 4. Tyler had originally considered casting a younger actor for the role of Robert Bonham, but when Jack arrived with a mustache and longer hair, Tyler realized they could easily de-age Jack with makeup and effects, allowing him to portray Robert over several decades. This not only saved money, but also provided continuity. Jack was nailing it. In today's scene, Robert Bonham was pushing Angelica away after his wife's death 6 months earlier. He believed he needed to grieve alone, while Angelica, who had loved him since her teenage years, yearned for him. Despite Robert's insistence on keeping their distance, Angelica threw caution to the wind and pursued him. Scene: office interior of Bonham Law Firm, day, Angelica. Mi querido, you cannot mourn forever. I am here. I love you. I long for your touch. Don't push me away. Angelica walks toward Robert, arms open wide. As she approaches, his expression reveals his inner turmoil. He grieves for his late wife, but she is gone. Angelica, vibrant and beautiful, desires him. Robert closes his eyes, feeling a wave of calm wash over him. A smile spreads across his face as he opens his arms, and Angelica leaps into his embrace. They share a passionate kiss. End scene. The British have a unique word that's difficult to translate into American English. Thunderstruck comes close, but it doesn't quite capture the essence. The British term is gobsmacked. Kissing Maria Elena left Jack feeling gobsmacked. This was not good at all. He needed to find Tyler. It was time to recast his role. In the service department at Bullard Chevrolet, Danny Bullard was furious. Out of the 4 interviews he scheduled for a new service manager, 3 had canceled, and 2 hadn't even called. After nearly 6 months of managing both the service and sales departments, the stress was taking its toll. He found himself snapping at employees and customers, with Kathy bearing the brunt of his frustration. Last night, in a fit of rage, he had pushed her against the closet door, seeing fear in her eyes. He just needed to find a good service manager. Still agitated, Danny received a call over the PA that he was needed in the service drive. Upon arrival, he was greeted by an attractive customer with a blonde ponytail, black yoga pants, and a pink AOC for President t-shirt. She resembled a Barbie soccer mom. Next to her was a younger girl, possibly her daughter or sister, both fitting the same mold. Danny forced a smile as he approached. "Hi, I'm Danny Bullard, the owner. How can I help you?" "I'm Marcy Clarendon. I dropped off my Suburban last week because the air conditioner stopped working. Your service advisor charged me $150 to diagnose the issue, saying the compressor was bad. She also mentioned needing to replace the accumulator and orifice, totaling $1,500. Marcy glanced at her invoice, giving Danny a chance to glare at Debbie, his only female service advisor, who avoided eye contact. "I authorized the repairs, but when I picked up my Suburban, the air conditioner still wasn't working. Your advisor told me I'd have to leave it again, but could keep the loaner. Later, I found out the evaporator was leaking and that it would cost another $1,500 to fix." She waved the estimate at him. "That's unacceptable. What will you do about it?" Danny tried to sound sympathetic. "That's unfortunate. Sometimes not all issues can be identified at once. The most serious problems are tackled first and others may arise later." Marcy wasn't satisfied. "I paid $150 for a diagnosis. If I pay for it, I expect it to be accurate. If your team had done their job, we wouldn't be here." Danny attempted to calm her down, knowing a confrontation was the last thing he needed. "Let's think rationally. The price would be the same whether diagnosed all at once or in stages." Her reaction to being told to calm down only escalated her anger. "I was willing to pay $1,500 for air conditioning, not $3,000 for an 8-year-old Suburban. I want the old parts reinstalled and a refund." Danny glanced at Debbie, who mouthed, "Gone." Turning back to Marcy, he replied, "That's not possible. The parts have been sent for recycling. However, I can waive the $150 diagnosis fee if you replace the evaporator." Danny's headache was worsening, and he just wanted the day to end. "That's not acceptable. I want a refund. Restore my truck to its original condition, or I want to speak to your boss." Danny exhaled loudly, reaching his limit. "When I said I'm the owner, did you think I had someone to answer to? Charlie Chevrolet doesn't sign my paycheck. I make the final decisions here. Pay for the evaporator or don't, it's your choice. My car's air conditioner works fine, and I don't care if you sweat. If you want to come back after hours, we can discuss it then. He turned and left the service department. He didn't see the younger girl smile and give Marcy a thumbs up. Straight Flush Ranch, 125 miles west of Austin, Texas. Set of The Lawyers TV show. Tyler went all out for the wrap party. Buckman's BBQ from Fredericksburg catered, and there were beer tubs every 10 feet. 2 bar tents stocked with a variety of liquors were set up as part of Tyler's open bar. 3 bands were scheduled to play, and the party began after the last scene, wrapped at 2 in the afternoon, running until the next morning. Tyler provided buses to transport the cast back to their hotels or Airbnbs, encouraging everyone to enjoy themselves since Ascendant was footing the bill. Jack, not much of a drinker, had been nursing the same beer for an hour. He sat on hay bales arranged around the stage, leaning back with his eyes closed, soaking up the sun while listening to the music when Maria Elena sat next to him. He could tell it was her by the hint of sandalwood she wore. "You've been avoiding me for weeks, mi general," she said, emphasizing general with a Spanish accent. Jack sighed. After their on-screen kiss, he had begged Tyler to let him out of his contract, but Tyler had laughed it off. "Every time you move, her eyes follow you. I know you have it bad for her, and I think she feels the same. I don't know what she sees in an old soldier, but you're lucky. So, no, I'm not letting you out of your contract. She's been through a lot in the past few years, and you're partly responsible for bringing her out of her shell. Take her out, enjoy life. You both deserve happiness." Jack remained determined to keep his distance. Maria Elena was 17 years younger and internationally famous, the niece of the King of Spain. What could he offer her? A 3-bedroom house in Round Rock, Texas? He opened his eyes to face her. She wore cowboy boots, jeans, a cowboy hat, and a brown t-shirt with the U.S. Army logo. "You're right, Maria. I've been avoiding you. When I'm around you, I lose my sense of self. I don't like that loss of control. It scares me." Maria smiled. "You're not going to war again, mi general. After we're married a few years, perhaps you won't lose control anymore." Jack shook his head. "I have a 3-bedroom house in Round Rock. I'm a college history teacher living out a temporary fantasy by acting on a TV show. Once it's over, I'll be back to teaching." "Maria, I'm not who you're looking for." "Jack, I'm 35, a widow who lost her child. Millions saw my husband die on television, and I've relived his death countless times. Do you know what else I replay?" Maria looked at Jack, who shook his head. "I remember the conversation we had the night before he died when I told him I wouldn't ignore his affairs anymore. I said I'd be divorcing him after the race." Tears streamed down her face as she spoke. He was distraught and should have withdrawn from the race, but his pride wouldn't let him. That pride eliminated him. "I feel responsible. That's why I isolated myself for 3 years. I lost my husband and my baby and mourned things beyond my control. You're the first person I've wanted to be with since then. You, Jack. No one else. I love you. I ache for you. Please don't turn me away." Jack smiled. "That sounds like a line from a cheesy TV show." Maria smiled back. "And so it is, my husband-to-be. Bullard Chevrolet, Dallas, Texas. Owner's office. Hi, Mr. Bullard, this is Cammie Carson. I'm a producer for Deadline America. Are you familiar with our show?" Danny's first instinct was to think someone was playing a prank on him. Of course he knew Deadline America. It was the most watched news magazine show on TV. "I know your show. What can I do for you, Miss Carson?" "We're planning a series on retired athletes who have successfully transitioned into the business world. We often hear stories about athletes going bankrupt shortly after leaving professional sports, so we thought this series would provide a positive counterpoint. Would you be interested? We would interview you and your wife at your home and dealership." Why, yes, he was definitely interested. Kathy would be thrilled. Bullard home, Dallas, Texas. Danny and Kathy were curled up on the sofa, anxiously waiting for Deadline America to start. The producers had told them the entire episode would feature them, and the segment had been heavily promoted on TV and social media, making them almost dread the show. They hadn't seen the final edit, and were about to experience it alongside the rest of America. The episode opened with a recap of Danny's football career, from high school to college, and his time as a defensive tackle for the Chicago Bears. It detailed how he earned the nickname Da Bull in Chicago, known for his fierce playing style and tumultuous life off the field. Highlights included his notable plays, Pro Bowl appearances, and his Super Bowl loss to the Colts. The story then shifted to his trade to the Dallas Cowboys, suggesting that the team was misled into acquiring a player past his prime, which upset Danny. Interviews with players and coaches painted a mixed picture, with many being non-committal and a few outright rude. The show then transitioned to Danny's purchase of a Chevrolet dealership and his life in Dallas post-football. Kathy was shocked when the discussion turned to Danny's past romantic partners, noting that none agreed to appear on camera, which spoke volumes. The next segment focused on Kathy, who danced around questions about her background, opting instead to highlight her charitable work and upcoming role as co-chair of the Beef and Oil Gala. Then came a surprise interview with her daughter, Kelsey. Kelsey, in her West Point cadet uniform, spoke about her father and how her mother had cheated on him and left for a used car salesman. A montage of Jack's photos followed, showcasing his rise through the Army, his medals, and a poignant moment of Kathy pinning his general star on his collar. The montage included Jack's novel and clips from The Lawyers, where he was not just a minor character, but a star alongside Maria Elena. The final photo showed Jack in his Army uniform, with a voiceover stating, "Brigadier General, Reverend Jack McCloud refused to comment on his ex-wife, saying only, 'I have nothing to say about that woman.'" The next interview featured Carolyn Collier, chair of the Beef and Oil Gala. When asked about Kathy's role, Carolyn laughed. "The Bullards made a generous donation, but that's the extent of their involvement. They aren't even on the guest list." Kathy sat in shock, while Danny seethed with rage, not just because of the wasted $300,000, which he desperately needed, but because he sensed what was coming. The interviewer accompanied Danny around the service department, where he showcased their top-notch equipment and commitment to customer service. Then the interviewer asked if Danny would comment on a video the producers had received. Thinking he had nothing to hide, Danny agreed. But then he was blindsided while Kathy glared at him. The young woman who had been filming the interaction was revealed to be the daughter of the woman he despised, complicating matters even further. Bullard Chevrolet, Dallas, Texas, owner's office. "Hi, Michael. What do I owe this honor?" Danny forced a smile, despite feeling like he could explode. "Hi, Danny. I'll get straight to the point. After watching Deadline, America last night, we're calling in your override loan." He was relieved Danny couldn't see his smirk. While he didn't know Jack McCloud personally, he respected him as a fellow Army Ranger. Rangers lead the way. "What? You can't do that. That's $3 million. I can't afford that, and you don't have the right to call it in. My account is in good standing with Phoenix. According to our latest participation agreement, we can call in your loan under certain conditions, including if your reputation harms our brand, which it has. The key issue is if you lose the franchise rights to sell a manufacturer's brand." "What are you talking about?" Danny shouted. "We're still Bullard Chevrolet, and we plan to stay that way." "Have you talked to Ken Hodges today?" Michael asked. Ken Hodges was the vice president of dealer franchise operations for Chevrolet, a powerful figure in the industry. "No, I haven't spoken to Ken today." Danny paced his office, feeling nauseous and with a pounding headache. Just then, he heard a knock at the door. He was about to angrily tell whoever it was to go away, but when he turned and saw the figure standing there, he placed the phone down gently and said, "Hi, Ken. What brings you here?" "Bullard home, Dallas, Texas." All Danny wanted was a double scotch and some peace and quiet. Instead, he was faced with a frustrated Kathy. "Did you see the Emmy nominations that came out today?" she asked immediately. Danny took a big gulp of his scotch before responding. "When do you think I have time for that nonsense? I'm working 80 hours a week trying to keep the dealership afloat as an independent dealer. Why would I care about a TV awards show?" He downed the rest of his drink and headed to the bar for a refill. Jack was nominated for an Emmy for Best Actor in a mini-series. Can you believe that? It's bad enough I missed out on being on set while they filmed his book and meeting all those famous actors. I missed a chance to attend the awards show because of you, she said, her voice laced with anger. Tears filled Kathy's eyes. She had nothing to look forward to, not even the Beef and Oil Gala, despite the $300,000 donation that hadn't earned her an invitation. The Emmys felt almost as prestigious as the Oscars, and she regretted missing it. Her ex-husband was suddenly famous, praised for his portrayal of Robert Bonham, and his novel was a bestseller. Last week, she read that Jack had been cast as Hollywood heartthrob Gary Cleveland's brother in a major film. She envisioned them dining in Cannes with Gary and his glamorous wife. That could have been her life. She realized how badly she had messed up. At the Emmy Awards held at the Microsoft Theater in Los Angeles, the Lawyers received 10 Emmy nominations, with Mark Tibbs nominated for Best Supporting Actor in a miniseries, and Maria Elena Montoya nominated for Best Actress. In a surprising twist, retired Brigadier General Jack McCloud was nominated for Best Actor. While it was no shock when Mark and Maria Elena won, it was expected that Jack would not. When the winner was announced, Jack smiled ruefully and applauded along with the audience, having not even prepared an acceptance speech. The highlight of the past year for Jack was his growing closeness with Maria Elena. Sitting beside him in the Microsoft Theater, she gazed at him adoringly, and he smiled back. They kept their budding romance private, with only Kelsey aware of Jack's feelings for Maria Elena, though he noticed Tyler smirking at him from the corner of his eye. Kelsey was excited about their relationship and wanted Jack to propose right away. She planned to come home for a few weeks over the summer and was eager to meet Maria. It had been almost 2 years since her parents' divorce, and Kelsey had spoken to her mother only a few times, never visiting her. She felt the need for another woman in the family. Jack McLeod's home in Round Rock, Texas was a quiet retreat, so he was surprised when the doorbell rang. That he spent so little time at home that he couldn't understand how anyone knew he was there. The girls were out shopping, and he was organizing his files for the move when he heard the ring. Opening the door, he was shocked to see Kathy. "Kathy," he said coldly. "Hello, Jack. Can I talk to you for a minute?" Kathy looked unwell, her eyes haunted and her complexion pale. Jack sighed. "Sure, come on in. You know the way." Kathy took a seat in the chair that used to be hers, tears welling up at the memory. Jack sat in his usual chair, which felt different after months away. "You're selling the house? Why? I love this place." Kathy's eyes filled with tears. "I don't spend much time here. I bought land west of Austin and am building a house there. I've also bought some horses and plan to spend my time there when I'm not on location. I saw you on TV in that movie with Gary Cleveland. You were great, Jack. Why didn't you try acting when we were married?" Jack shook his head at the absurdity of the question. "In case you forgot, I was busy being a general in the Army. Acting wasn't on my radar then or now, except my agent has me contracted for 3 movies over the next 2 years. Kathy's eyes widened. "I wanted to say how sorry I am for everything. I had it all and threw it away." Tears spilled as she wrung her hands. "I'm so sorry. I divorced Danny. You won't have to worry about him again." Jack suppressed an eye roll. "Okay, Kathy, I forgive you. It's water under the bridge. No harm, no foul. We're good." He stood up. "Was there anything else? Do you think there's any chance?" She was interrupted by voices coming from the kitchen. The girls were back early. As they entered, Kathy was startled to see her daughter with a beautiful, obviously pregnant Hispanic woman, a few years older than Kelsey. Their laughter stopped when they noticed Kathy. "Mother," Kelsey said flatly, "what brings you here?" "Kels," Jack warned, urging her to be nice. "Have a seat, ladies. Kathy was just asking me something." He gestured to Kathy. "You were saying—" Kathy took a deep breath. If she was going to humble herself, she might as well do it in front of her daughter, though facing a pregnant stranger was daunting. "Kelsey, it's been a couple of years since I've seen you, so I don't know all your friends. Don't you want to introduce me?" "Sorry, Mother. You were always into Hollywood gossip, so I assumed you'd recognize her. Kathy, Bullard, or Bascom these days. Either way, this is Maria Elena Montoya. She's my friend and, more importantly, my father's fiancée and the mother of my soon-to-be little sister. Maria Elena, meet the stupidest woman in America."